Hello everyone, if you're new to my channel, consider liking and subscribing. It will make me feel wonderful if you do that. Thanks. By the way, I also have another Naruto and Luffy fanfiction channel. If you are interested, link is in the description. Deadly Drinking Pirate by Darren. Ace was wondering about that sake he stole from those pirates before allowing his little brother Luffy drink it when they became brothers. And now Luffy has gained a new ability, one that defies the laws of devil fruits and yet makes him even stronger than before. Watch this drunk-proof pirate become the king of them all. Mature Luffy duel. Devil fruit. Luffy/Harim, I don't own anything, adios.
Previously on Deadly Drunken Pirate. What's that for? Zoro said in growing frustration. That Mihawk not only wasn't afraid of him like all the previous prey but thought that a blade that small will be all Mihawk needed to fight him. That's Mihawk's Kogatana. Luffy said, not caring if anyone heard or not. Sensing that he at least got some attention for that statement, he continued. Mihawk uses it to determine if his next opponent is really all they say. It took me an entire year fighting that thing to even get Mihawk to realize how old it was getting. What do you mean, Luffy? Usopp asked, and Luffy smiled. You trained with Mihawk. A smirk was all anyone needed for an answer. That and this. Sure, but the rest is a story for another time. Luffy said and faced the conflict which could only be a one-sided battle. Zoro was now fighting like a madman, enraged at the silent insult Mihawk was showing. That was because Mihawk is so good with blades that he was able to match and overwhelm Zoro while only a pocket knife. When Zoro tried to get serious, he unwillingly let his guard down and was stabbed in the chest with the Kogatana. Brother! Damn you! Johnny and Yosaku were outraged at the sight but suddenly found themselves dizzy and unable to even lift themselves over the railings. Usopp was a little surprised at the sight but only looked at Luffy with the expression on his face, saying everything running through his mind. Meanwhile, Zoro was not even trying to escape, and it was because he treasured his honor over his life. In one twisted way, that is a good way to go. Mihawk was impressed that Zoro realized that the former had missed the latter's heart on purpose. Taking out his biggest blade from his back, that Mihawk called Black Sword Yuru, he charged for Zoro, who was preparing to use his strongest move. However, it was not enough and Zoro was left with two broken swords in his hands and even more damage to his body. But he refused to back down now. Scars on a swordsman's back is his greatest shame. Excellent. That was to be the last word heard until the sound of flesh ripping apart and settled in everyone's ears. And after only a few seconds that felt like an eternity, this cut the silence in half. Zoro. XXXXX. I am Don Krieg. I will not be seen as a coward by fleeing from who dares try to follow me. Krieg. There is a thin line between bravery and foolishness. But no one will notice the character of coward on your list of bad features. It is just under dishonest, cruel, vile, and finally, pathetic. Pathetic. Why you? Krieg tried to charge for Luffy but was intercepted by a slash that had left a mark on the piece of wood both they were standing. Hey, that's my ship. Was you ship Krieg, and if you are the cunning, backstabbing and scheming cheater you are, you will know not to cross that line. Luffy said before making his way with his saber in hand while his katana back in its scabbard. Like a little boy with a straw hat is going to scare me, now Krieg, of course, never listened more out of pride and indeed foolish bravery and crossed the line anyway. But once he set his first foot on the other side, he kneed down in unknown pain that caused him to choke in blood. Krieg tried to speak but the blood clogging up his throat and mouth made it nigh impossible. The strength throughout his entire body had left in an instant, like when Krieg was on the brink of starvation. What the hell is this? I never felt so much pain in my bones and my skin feels like it is trying to keep in lava. Krieg thought until he heard the very last voice he ever wanted to. Do you remember that bottle of wine I gave you when you first arrived at the Barati? Luffy said. I wasn't lying. I made that wine in that bottle myself. And I never give it except to those I wish to kill in the next 24 hours. And that is because I can easily use my powers to poison you, Krieg. Everyone gasped in disbelief, shock and horror. This kid actually tricked Krieg into digesting poison. Just what is wrong with this boy? All they can do is ask themselves that once they saw that Krieg couldn't even stand on his knees anymore and fell to the deck with his face contorted in pain and something he claimed to lack, fear. And if that wasn't ugly enough, the eyes and mouth were leaking tears of foam that caused something of an acidic reaction with the deck wood. And then, nothing happened. No one moved. No one spoke. It was like no one was able to breathe. That is until coughing was heard and water leaving one's mouth had followed. It was Zoro and he finally came to after that near-death experience that sent Luffy over the edge for only a few minutes. Zoro. Big brother, cough cough. I didn't kill your first mate Luffy. I merely tested him and since he proved to be better than the insects that come and go, I spared him. Mihawk said and faced the direction of Zoro after placing his Yuru back into its holder on the former's back. He then announced to Zoro that he was waiting for the latter to come and take his title. And you should look out for Zoro Luffy. Because if he dies before taking my throne, then I will hunt you down and kill you, understand? Yes, master. Luffy, but Mihawk just chuckled, something as rare as a blue moon for the all-serious and stern Mihawk. You have no reason left to call me that, Luffy. I really have nothing left to teach you about, and I know you will not abuse my teachings, so see the world, make more friends and do what only Roger was able to do. That was to be the last of Hawkeye Mihawk for the remainder of the day and pretty much the whole year. Unless Luffy has anything to say about it. XXXXX. You said that you need a cook on your crew, right? Luffy and Yosaku turned to Sanji, who was leaning on one of the walls, taking another smoke like usual, and yet they both knew that those words came from his mouth. I do, but I can't afford to have an indecisive person in my crew and working in my ship. What made you change your mind? Luffy was excited to hear the one he chose finally wanting to join, but if he just said yes, it will only make him sound desperate. Desperate was a word that Luffy will rather die than to hear someone call him that. Because I have a dream, Sanji said and got Luffy's attention. My dream is to find the all blue where all four of the blue seas meet. Where every single ingredient in the world are in one place. Paradise for a sea cook like myself. Sanji finally admitted and expected to hear at least some laughter. Silence was all he heard instead. But Sanji just couldn't wait for a response either, and I have learned everything there is to cooking and the old man's fighting style. I am sure to be able to handle whatever will happen if I join you. Is that good enough, Captain? Luffy was silent, trying to spot any deception in that tone. There was none. That is when Luffy smiled and patted Sanji on the shoulder. Then you are in, Sanji. And I promise you that once we are done sailing the Grand Line, that dream will just be around the corner. Because by then, you will a chef worthy to cook up anything that can be found in the all blue. Thank you, Captain. Sanji said before he started to show tears down his cheeks. Thank you. Sanji then left saying that he needed to pack up, but it was also to hide his tears while within his room. Tears that he was finally leaving the restaurant and that he was given a chance to try it his dream. Dreams, that is what truly pirates are for. To seek adventure and see the world as they can before their untimely ends. Whatever dreams were completed or not, pirates don't die screaming or crying but laughing at all the fun they had before they die. Luffy, that is all Nami could say while on the King's Gourd, someone sailing it with only her two hands despite it being big enough to house 20 men the least and required as much to maintain the course with. I hope this plan works. Not that I don't like you, but Luffy, you are the biggest, reckless idiot I know. She was only able to say after aiding hard. That is why I want to sail with you. You can make anything happen, my real captain. Elsewhere on the sea, this doesn't make any sense, Yosaku said for what seemed to be the uncounted time given how everyone looked sick and tired of those words already. Why would Nami steal the main ship while Mihawk was here but left this smaller one, the Going Merry, for us? There is nothing but sails and flags on this ship. That is because all the money we have collected is on the King's Gourd and Nami needs that money for her village. Luffy said in a casual tone, but Sanji. Of course she needs that money. She needs it to buy all the stuff to bring our dating relationship. Sanji was still the shameless, perverted daydreamer when she isn't flirting with Nami or any other women that he sees with his supposedly single eye. But isn't Nami also dating Luffy, Sanji? Johnny said, and Sanji flinched and stirred rather violently. Almost like an invisible man had come and pierced him in the heart section of his chest. Why? Why would the most beautiful woman in the sea want with the stupid captain? I cooked until my hands fell asleep, but she still chose the captain over someone like me. Sanji was now on the floor, pounding weakly in deep depression. And I am glad that the witch actually has someone that still trusts her even after she had the nerve to throw my bothers like fish bait in order to steal our ship. Leaving the Going Merry was just adding salt to the wounds, adding insult to injury. Zoro grumbled angrily but was hit on the head twice and by 2 different blows. What? Don't you dare insult the beautiful and pure Nami. And don't you dare try and agitate your wounds, Mr. Zoro. While everyone ignored Sanji's voice, Kaya's words can't be denied as she is still the working ship doctor. But Kaya had been involved only as long and she still had a lot to learn in order to treat everything disease and injury related with sailing. Right. Hold your horses, girlie. Zoro is still the gruff type and that was his way of apologizing. If only everyone other than Luffy could get used to it. What did you say to Kaya? Shut up, all of you. And before Usopp could start another argument, the old peace bringer himself, aka the captain, stepped in. It is getting quite difficult to concrete on making sure we get to where Nami is heading. You should be lucky that my girlfriend had given me a map to her home island. You all should be ashamed of yourself for distrusting Nami. Luffy said all in one breath and everyone said, sorry, in their own way. And don't you even think of it, Sanji. Now get to cooking, it is lunchtime. The cook signed and Droopy walked like a beaten puppy to the kitchen of the Going Merry that actually was fully stocked on tools and ingredients. Yosaku should stop stretching the truth. Sanji would have more guts to defend himself, but after seeing the captain take on the greatest swordsman in the world evenly and killed Krieg without even physically touching him, Sanji is now afraid of Luffy's power. In fact, everyone on the Going Merry is afraid of the captain. But what got them to be a little distant of him and remarkably obedient to a fault is what Yosaku and Johnny said about Mihawk. that the greatest swordsman in the world is also a government dog, a member of the Shichibukai. The Shichibukai are 7 military seas, aka the 7 warlords of the sea, are basically 7 powerful and influencing pirate captains that have been asked by the government to help the Marines handle any outbreak of pirate crews, anywhere in the world. And each of these 7 warlords were once pirates that had a reputation for being unstoppable and unbeatable. In fact, any pirate crew that tries to take on a Shichibukai member will be suicidal. The other than being recruited by the government to handle other pirates, another reason the Shichibukai are often called government dogs is that once a pirate captain becomes a member of the Shichibukai, their bounties are frozen and their actions are overlooked by the government officials and Marines officers. Pirates all around the world think that the Shichibukai had lost their will to be free and also lost any pride to follow orders around by the government. According to the brothers, not only was Mihawk part of the Shichibukai, but there was another member who was connected to another pirate entirely that set up shop here in the East Blue. Jimbei, the Knight of the Sea, had supposedly unleashed a holy terror into the East Blue as quoted from Yosaku. And this holy terror was named Arlong, a member of a race known as fishmen, that are like anthropomorphic creatures that have the characteristics of fish. What the case, they were headed to the Konami Islands and more specially Kokoyashi village. That was where Nami lives, and it is also where another land site known as Arlong Park is located. Even an idiot will be able to tell that is where Arlong's headquarters is. XXXXX. Meanwhile, I am home everyone. Hey, it's Nami. You are back, Nami. The girl with hair of tangerine orange walked past the residents of the area known as Arlong Park. She ignored how surprising they looked. It was like humans had suddenly taken on the features of various breeds of fish while wearing festival, summer clothes and sandals. They are the fishmen that made up the entire pirate crew. Nami was more interested in the one that sat on the throne while surrounded by all of them, Sawtooth, Arlong himself. You big girl, what brought you back after only 2 months? Arlong is a large, muscular, light blue saw shark fishman whose most distinctive trait is his saw-shaped nose. He has long, black hair with a widow's peak reaching down to his shoulders, under a brown ushanka. He has a fin on his nape, surrounded by his hair, and the gills are located on both the sides of his neck. There is a tattoo of a sun on the left side of his chest, while a Jolly Roger similar to his face is on his lower left arm. Other notable features include thin, fierce light blue eyes and a long, angular jaw. Arlong's attire is composed of fashionable, light clothes, reflecting his rich status as well as his background as a thug. He wears a short-sleeved, unbuttoned yellow shirt decorated by many black lightning-like spots, Bermuda shorts which are brown in the manga and green in the anime, a purple sash around the waist and simple sandals. He also sports a lot of jewels. He has a golden chain bracelet around his left wrist and 2 golden bracelets around each ankle, with straw-like decorations hanging from them. On his hands are what appear to be rings, decorated by colorful gems. I just got this empty feeling in my heart, so I came back to see what did you do to me. Nami said uncouthly while wearing a sleeveless shirt compared to the one that covered half of the upper part of her arm. It revealed that she had a tattoo just like the ones that Arlong had on his flag as well as everyone on his crew. But regardless, Arlong just laughed it up. Then he announced Nami's arrival to the rest of the crew who had been taking a dip in the pools that made up Arlong Park, saying that they will have a banquet for the occasion, but Nami didn't feel happy about it. She was still worried about what Luffy had asked of her to do sometime between Orangetown and the Bharati, and it was during the time they became an unofficial couple. Flashback begins. Nami, the navigator, turned to see her new captain in the doorframe of her room on board the King's Gourd. Can I come in? Nami was just wondering why a boy like Luffy just appeared from the sky, but she could have sworn that it was a gift from the heavens. Kind, polite, caring, thoughtful and clever enough to pull schemes off without a fault and come up with plans on the fly. Not to mention that Nami noticed that Luffy couldn't be any more handsome and wild looking, which had got her fancy for sure. And his aura just screamed dominance, so much that she found herself stuttering and losing her concentration easily at times. Sure, Nami said within her tone, since the sun of the departing daylight had almost caused Luffy's wild looks to overload Nami's processors. Luffy relaxed on the bed that Nami was also sitting on. SOW, what's you up? Don't be frightened too much, but I know. Luffy started and actually got Nami more curious than scared, but that will be inversed once she got clearer on this. I know about Sawtooth Arlong and his crew that you are part of. But, how? Nami screamed but found her hand being clutched by Luffy's, never even trying to let go. That necessary when Luffy silently took the sleeve covering Nami's left arm, to reveal Arlong's mark of members of his crew. I have ways, and that is what I want to talk to you about. Luffy said, and Nami was worried. Once anyone learned about this, Nami can say goodbye to them and never hear from them again. But, I want to help you, Nami. I want you to be free. But Luffy, I am member of another crew. I am cheating on you. Nami tried to get this over with and see just what lengths will Luffy really go for her. You wanted to come because of your own personal reasons, but every time I see you look at your left arm, it is pain. guilt and sadness I always see in your eyes. Arlong forced you to be part of his crew. I will never do such a thing to you, Nami. Luffy said without a hitch or crack in his voice. I want you to be where you want to, and in order for you to do so is to be free of your bounds. And I will help you, Nami, to be free and complete your dream. Nami didn't say a word, despite how much she wanted to internally. Luffy ignored this and hugged her gently and warmly, to help with her shivering and tears. And it worked. Nami had ceased her shaking and dried her eyes while in Luffy's chest, not caring if the shirt will get wet. Thank you, Luffy, thank you. You're welcome, Nami. Now please get some sleep. We have a long way to go. Luffy answered and tried to stand up from the bed, but Nami pulled him back so all of a sudden that he fell on it instead. Nami? Luffy, I love you. Before Luffy could retort, Nami silenced him when she had their lips met with a kiss. Luffy saw that Nami wanted this and even noticed it when she wanted to explore his own mouth with her tongue. And what better way for them both to enjoy it than to get in with the action? When Luffy allowed her to taste his mouth and kissed her back, Nami felt like the happiest girl in the world. After a good 10 minutes, heavens knows how they did it, they both had to break for some air back into their lungs. Nami, you really? Luffy left it trailing off and Nami nodded. Luffy then said nothing until he started to disrobe right in front of Nami, causing her to blush but sighed in relief when the raven-haired pirate stopped with his pants still on and only his above clothes taken off. She then wanted to get in with this chance by taking off all but her underwear, hoping to get a reaction out of Luffy. Beauty, in all its natural form. Can't even dream of anything better. Thank you. I hope that I grow gracefully for my age, Nami said in a nervous tone while finding no strength when Luffy then gently clutched her in his arms. He then tucked both himself and Nami into the covers with the same gentleness. Call it whatever you like, princess, it is all the same beauty. Nami found herself giggling and even more engrossed in Luffy's warmth now that she was slightly naked. But I wish that I feel like you do. Nami then felt like she was a fool and stripped for a boy who didn't appreciate her feelings until. So tell me more about yourself, Nami. I will gladly learn how to give you all the love and pleasure you can ever ask for. Please teach me, you're the only one who can. Please do it, for both of us. That was it, Nami didn't care anymore. She seared it all in another passionate kiss while trying to get Luffy to feel more of her body, even the usually private sections. Thank you, Luffy, I love you, I will always do, and I will teach you how to love, Captain. Luffy smiled and started a kiss on his own this time and then nodded away. Now Nami felt the same, feeling just the right amount of warmth, hearing something that is soft and beating at a steady pattern like a lullaby. All of it right around her and in her bed. Nami will have a good night's sleep for sure. Flashback ends. Luffy, Nami resorted to speaking to herself via her thoughts rather than her voice because even a whisper will put her into danger. You're the boy I have been dreaming of at night after doing dirty work for these jerks. And since it was late in the evening and in the party once Nami had finished walking down memory lane, she then silently excused herself to her room within Arlong Park to hide her tears as she ignored the shelves of books on map writing and navigation to sit at a table that was designed to aid a mapmaker at their worker. But Nami wasn't going to write even a single line that evening, she just broke down as her tears had finally got out of control. Luffy, please, save me. Save me from myself, Captain. That was to be unanswered for that same night. XXXXX the next day, once the Going Merry had reached the island that is supposed to be where both Kokoyasi Village and Arlong Park is stationed. So Luffy, the captain, was in the part of the ship where the helm was placed. And a rather unique one considering that it is not in the shape of the usual steering wheel but with a steering pole, with a sheep's head like the one used for the ship's figurehead. By tilting the pole left or right, the rudder at the stern will move in that direction. Where are we going to dock at Kokoyasi Village? Kaya asked as she entered via the door in front of the helm. Kaya, we are not going to sail to Kokoyasi Village. But isn't that where we are going, and that is where Nami is found? Kaya interrupted Luffy and before the captain could clarify. Are you saying that we are not going to save Nami for the fishman pirates? You selfish, idiotic. Voices of protests followed Sanji's but it didn't even last part 1 minute. Shut up, everyone did as so and saw that Luffy was iterated with them again, just like when the first left the Barati on the Going Merry. What I wanted to say is that Kokoyasi Village is very dangerous to ships as the village is well in eyesight of Arlong Park and the pirates could easily sink us. That is why we are only getting on foot and from another village that is close to Kokoyasi but is out of range of Arlong Park. The Going Merry will be more safe there than the alternative. Unless you want to convince Usopp and Kaya to risk it. No, that was the immediate response and the whole crew plus Johnny and Yosaku had to get the blunt of the sheer volume of both Usopp and Kaya that answered all at once. Good, then we are going to take the Going Merry to Gosa Village like I said so we can keep the ship out of danger. Luffy explained and everyone nodded. After an hour making sure that no one from Arlong Park saw or heard the coming, Luffy and his crew had boarded the shore. Alright, we got a lot of priorities which include finding our main ship so we will need to scatter so that any pirates stationed here wouldn't be able to connect any of us together. Once they do then it is all over, understand? Seeing everyone nod, Luffy smiled. This could work out easier than he had prepared for after all. Alright then. Kaya, Johnny, Yosaku take Zoro to Kokoyashi village in search of a doctor since they didn't have such a thing on the Barati. But Luffy, Zoro whined but was silenced. You need help that Kaya still needs to learn and we are in a hurry. And no island in any sea can't be without a certified doctor. Luffy briefed them the best he could. Now then, Usopp and Sanji, you will check out Gosa village and find out anything you can about Arlong. If they won't talk then find your info out your own way but make sure not to get caught. Okay Luffy, and thanks for the present. I am sure to use it right. Usopp said in an encrypted tone, to which Luffy shook his hand in an effort. And you captain, what are you going to do? Isn't lovely Ms. Alvida coming with a knight like me along with a page like Longnose? I built the king's gourd while still on the ocean surface and Alvida knows it when she sees it. So she will be coming with me, and nice try by the way Sanji. Luffy said in a stoic tone that got Sanji depressed all over again and the rest of the crew feeling like smirking at the sight. Let's move. When the two groups left in their own directions, Luffy and Alvida stayed put. Will he help us? I haven't even seen his scales since you made me eat the soup no am I? Alvida asked, and Luffy just placed his fingers into the water. I'm sure, it is very difficult to move such a beast like him around without causing any unwanted panic, and that is why I asked of him to disappear until I need him again. Alvida couldn't ask her captain more since Luffy knew exactly what he was doing regardless of what needed to be done, and it never let her down before. XXXXX. Meanwhile, what the hell is this? Both Usopp and Sanji just stood in one place while looking at the crazy destruction that greeted them as soon as they both got to Gosa village. It was like something had teared up the earth and the houses, like someone had flipped them all on their roofs as if they were cars tossed around by a toddler throwing a fit. What could have caused this? Sanji said, but noticed that Usopp was shaking like a leaf on a branch in the wind and his skin was pale and drenched nervous sweet. Usopp. Sanji didn't know their names and didn't want to make himself look soft in front of women, something about making himself look macho. Fishmen. Usopp finally spoke, but in a broken tone that was either newfound fear or immense shock. Luffy once told us about a race that resemble fish but walk and talk like us and even use weapons. But another thing that gives them the advantage in water is that they can naturally breathe water and survive even intense water pressure, but this is something else. Then what is it? Sanji was getting impatient with his own shock. Both in and out of water, all fishmen are also naturally 10 times stronger than the average human being. Sanji was just about to faint due to this new info and had to grab Usopp by the collar. If they are that strong, then how is our stupid captain thinking that we can take them on? Usopp then grabbed Sanji's hands and managed to wrench them off easily. Because we are nothing like the average human. We all are more like 15 times stronger in any aspect, which includes physical strength. Usopp said, which seemed a little far-fetched to any civilian's ears, but Sanji decided that since he personally could see seriousness instead of fear and lying in Usopp's eyes and tone, he will just go with it. And since I am a sniper, we prefer the high ground, so you will check on the surface while I check things from atop this toppled houses. Before Sanji could respond, Usopp surprised him by bouncing on top the flipped houses, a lot like a kangaroo. And so, Sanji was left on the trail that led past all the toppled houses in Gosa village. Hopefully, he will some luck of his own to find someone that can shed some more info, or at least anything useful. Meanwhile, Usopp was still bouncing on the new roof of the houses until he decided on one that had a tree cover. Underneath, he took out the bag that he brought along as mere spare ammo to Sanji and the bounty hunters, but the rest of the crew, they knew better. It was actually various pieces of a rifle. Pieces such as the flint, the handle, the striker and the tube where the bullets will move in order to get any distance of force. I sure am glad that I took Luffy's words and teachings good enough to get this as a present. A slingshot is just dandy, but I am going against fishmen and I need something with more range, force, and firepower. Usopp said to himself, and once he had completed his rifle, he revealed that there was spare ammo in that bag, with the purpose of hiding the pieces of the rifle so only Usopp can assemble it. Then he got on a lookout on top of the same tree that covered his works on his hidden rifle, in order to see if there were any trouble to break up. Instead, pissed, Usopp had picked up someone trying to get his attention and tried to find the source. Down here, Usopp got that hint and looked earthward. Come on. Usopp disappeared as soon as he appeared on the top of the tree while following a shadow that called out to him. After struggling to keep up, Usopp found himself among some kind of farm with a large array of bushes that obviously grow something to be harvested. Despite that piquing his curiosity, Usopp still followed the shadow into a house nearby. Inside was the same voice that got his attention in Gosa village. My name is Najiko. Najiko is an average-sized young woman with light blue hair and tanned skin. Her right arm and chest are heavily tattooed. She is usually seen wearing a beige sleeveless shirt, blue trousers and purple sandals. Furthermore, she appears to wear pink lip gloss. Usopp, just Usopp. The sniper could have tried to do more than this and tried to make him look golden as a man. But Luffy never tolerated such behavior and displayed that during hockey training, and Usopp never wanted to remember those days. So why were you in Gosa, Usopp? It was deserted a couple of days ago when everyone left the village dry, Nijiko said. I saw and I can guess that fishmen had caused it. What got them so angry, Usopp said, internally wondering why he isn't stuttering like he used to back home in Syrup Town. Because Gosa just couldn't keep paying their dues as they kept getting bigger and bigger until the whole town once admitted that they couldn't pay. And the fishmen decided to punish them and teach them a lesson by flipping the houses and running them out of Gosa. Nijiko said in a saddened tone. And he had to live like this for 8 years. Usopp softened his expression seeing that Nijiko was troubled and did the only thing he could think of. Usopp hugged her gently, which got her surprised. What the hell are you doing? You needed a hug, I can tell. Usopp said in a whisper, and soon, Nijiko said nothing and hugged him back, crying out her bottled up feelings. Thank you, idiot. Nijiko said after gently breaking up the hug. Next time, don't just hug a girl unless she is also about to break down. We hate it when it's otherwise. Just like what Luffy told me, Usopp said, and speaking of which, I need to find him and what Usopp? The sniper stopped in his tracks while Nijiko was wondering why. Going to tell me that you just hugged a girl besides Kaya? Please tell me that my little brother is becoming a womanizer like our cook? Luffy. Usopp turned to see the captain in question who was leaning in the open door frame with an amused Alvida besides him. Nope, she needed some comfort, that's all. You are too soft and too easy, little brother. Kaya is not going to like how I am going to tell this story to her. Luffy retorted, and Usopp then became downcasted and depressed. Just who are you? Nijiko was tired of being kept in the dark. But before she could get an answer, Luffy, Alvida and Usopp all cringed and looked in the same direction. Someone is in trouble and it is coming from the direction of Kokoyashi village. Luffy said, and then Nijiko started to panic and hurried towards the villager herself. The crew just raced after her to see what was going on for themselves. What they picked up on their haki was something of aggression and pain coming from two different signatures that are in close proximity. As they got closer to the village and then to where the negative feelings were coming from, the scene in their minds became more and more clear. To be a large human-like being with an actual human in the grasp of his hand, dangling over the dirt road. That's Mr. Genzo, Nijiko said, and the crew got a good look at who the fishman had in the palm of his hand. It was Arlong, outside of Arlong Park. Was one thing to notice about him. The pinwheel in the brim of his hat that rotated periodically in the wind. Another thing was the various scars on his face that made look like someone had sliced and diced him rather baldy, including the new and recent cuts in other places on his body. Other than that, Genzo was wearing something of a police uniform. Alvida. Luffy said, and the woman with a large club didn't need any words for orders. She just did what no man can possibly do. Gagged Nijiko with her hand and holding her back with an arm on her chest. Usopp, go. The sniper took in a huge gulp and a deep breath in before jumping to the top of a nearby house with rifle in hand and aimed to fire. Meanwhile, Luffy was going to watch and signal Usopp when it is time for the sniper to strike. A gun? I don't remember allowing civilians to bear arms. Are you trying to revolt against me, Genzo? Arlong interrogated the man who was struggling to even growl with a large, webbed hand clamped on his neck and airway. There are boars deep within the woods that we get our pork and meat. The skin of the boars are very thick that spears and knives are suicidal. That is why we use guns and rifles to hunt for them. That was what anyone could get out of Genzo's mouth minus the gagging and coughing in irregular patterns. And it was a valid reason to bear arms for sure, but Arlong just wasn't taking that, even for an excuse. Then we will take care of these boars. If you pay us extra berry. And that is if there were any boars in the woods. Not that we hadn't searched the whole R and every tree in case you were storing anything from or against us. Arlong mocked with sadist intent Genzo for trying to come up with a story to explain the possession of firearms among the residents of Kokoyashi village. Now you will tell us if there is any more weapons, so we will take them for ourselves. Now. Genzo managed to smirk at Arlong's words as if another way to mock the fishman in return. And even if I said, yes, will you believe me? I told you a lie, so how can I stop? Arlong snarled and tried to hold himself back because if he killed Genzo then he will never know if there are any more weapons or any other threat to his rule. But all those thoughts were dashed when something hit Arlong in the face and exploded. Genzo was released and backed off so none of the sparks or embers will spread to himself, and meanwhile, will try to bring back the shocked townspeople who feared that they will be neck if there are a sniper at work. But instead, everyone saw that the nearby fishmen were also shot on the head with every shot exploding on them. Unfortunately for any sniper trying to kill any of them, the fishmen were much tougher and got out with only smoke on their skin. Who the hell did that? Arlong was nothing worse, but his temper was raging red on his face for sure. And even though he looked, no sniper or anyone with a smoking rifle was in eyesight. Well, I will just, ARRGH, Arlong screamed when something hit his back and caused another explosion on the site. This caused Arlong to forget about the witnessing crowd because they were on the wrong side to cause that attack. That was the chance they all were looking for, and everyone, Even Genzo fled Kokoyashi village to the north while the fishmen were trying to find the mysterious and bold sniper that seemed to be nowhere but still hit his target anyways. But for the rest of the afternoon, they found no one. But the trouble today still wasn't over, and especially at Nijiko's farm with groves that revealed to grow tangerines. There were Marines raiding the groves of tangerines. What the hell are you doing? Those are my tangerine groves. I spent my whole life on them. Alvida somehow had lost her hold on Nijiko, but before she could try to pursue her. Think Alvida, Luffy said while he and Usopp were trying not to get involved by staying on the side of the house that the Marines can't see. We are pirates. The Marines will try to arrest Nijiko for even associating with us for less. Let's try to make this less troublesome as it can be before we all agree that we need to walk in. Genzo is coming anyways. Alvida saw that the same policeman with the scarred face did indeed come and try to defuse this situation. But chi, I'm sorry but we are only doing our job. We got a tip that a certain thief lives here and somewhere among these disgusting orange fields is where she had been stashing her loot over 8 years. Now keep looking. Yes, Captain Nezumi. The Marines addressed the arrogant and indifferent excuse for a person tear up a product of hard work as Nezumi, a Marine captain. Nezumi has the appearance of a rat. He has whiskers and rat ears attached to his Marine cap. He also has brown hair. Unlike most Marine captains that Luffy personally had ran into, he has a grayish blue button-up coat that goes down to his feet, with a black belt and blue shoulder pads. All in all, he practically screams both greedy, ignorant and arrogant. Captain, we have found a hoard of berries buried to the northeast, one of the Marine subordinates reported, which got Nijiko to gasp and Genzo to curse while the crew stayed out of sight. That is my treasure, stay away from it. That got the direct attention of all present and left for the direction of the voice north and east of the house and entrance to the tangerine groves. They all got at the same time and saw the same ugly sight. Nami, Nijiko cried out for the same girl that is slightly younger than she, trying to use her bow staff to fight Marines from a chest of bills and coins that was buried directly at the base of the 6th vine from the left and the 13th one from the right of the last intersection. The pirate crew now knew just why was Nami desperate for money, and when she said that she hated pirates and wanted to buy a certain village, it all made sense. The Arlong pirates had captured her hometown, forced her to be one of them, and now she has to run and steal in order to buy the village back, and it took 8 years to do it. So you are the petty thief. I ought to arrest you on serious accounts of it for a 8-year span if I didn't need to confiscate every single berry there is. After all, it is stolen goods and we Marines must recover it. Nezumi said, and was met with protests from all 3 local inhabitants. Then who told you where to find it? Nami shouted, and everyone could feel that the answer is going to make things a lot more interesting. I told you, it was a tip, and you all know who gives us all the money we need to keep going. We Marines don't work for free when it comes to protecting this island. Nezumi smirked, and everyone now figured it out. It was Arlong, he knew all about this, and now he sent you to steal all my money. Nami shouted, but Nezumi still chuckled arrogantly. Steal? You should talk, young thief, and if we didn't get the tip then we will have to bear the fact that we allowed a thief do what she wants under our noses. You can say all you want, but all this is yours and you tried to keep this a secret from everyone. All this was just for yourself. Nezumi mocked Nami and she tried to deck him, but instead a gunshot filled the groves. The crew, still in hiding, Nami and Genzo all saw that one of the Marine subordinates had fired his rifle but at Nijiko. The older girl pushed Nami out of the way and got glazed in the shoulder. Nijiko, sister. Now that was something that Nami never said to even Luffy, but that was all put aside when the Marines had taken the chance to retrieve the chest out of the dirt and proceed to take it to their ship. I told you that is my treasure. I was going to buy this village with it, give it back. Sorry thief, but this is what happens when you break the law. Chi. Nezumi chuckled in a mocking way and left with his subordinates. All the while, the crew remained undiscovered while Nami broke into tears and ran from the groves too, leaving Genzo with the injured Nijiko. Let us help. Genzo then turned to see Luffy and his crew, no long out of the drama. You. Genzo growled, but before he could say another word or continue to growl, Luffy and Usopp picked Nijiko up gently with Alvida looking after the wound, something that she personally couldn't help but doing, which was ironic as she caused wounds rather than fix them for her own crew. Genzo just showed the pirates where the island doctor has his infirmary. Seriously, I am pretty popular today with patients it seems. Dr. Neko, the doctor of the island in question, is an elderly man, with a wrinkled face, gray hair, and a gray mustache and goatee, along with gray eyebrows. He wears a bandana with a red cross, a common symbol for medical personnel, and sunglasses. He wears a striped light green and dark green shirt, under a doctor's coat with a red cross on the side on the right arm. First it was a huge slash that hasn't been tended to, then there was the poor work done by the girl on herself, and now this. Everyone just ignored how grumbly Neko may seemed as the good doctor does his work as Kaya nervously watched as she knew that she was the second case listed by Neko in his rant of a fit. They just tried to keep Usopp from interrupting Neko's work. He is still the overprotective boyfriend type that still denies being in a relationship with Kaya. no matter how clear it is that they are attracted to each other. Elsewhere, Zoro was taking a little nap despite the soreness from his large cut on his chest given the sewing on the edge of the wound that are swollen greatly. Anyways, why don't you go and find a real doctor for your crew? Will you be able to survive the Grand Line if we take you, doctor? Luffy answered, and that got everyone's interest. I mean it, that is where everyone on my crew is going, and I don't need just about any doctor. I need one that can survive the Grand Line like we are training to do. I guess you have a point, but even with this young lady, how are you going to battle life-threatening wounds or fatal illnesses? There are some that can only be found and contracted in the Grand Line. That is all I know about the Pirate's Graveyard. Pirate's Graveyard, huh? Luffy smirked. I have a friend that sails in the Grand Line and he told me about an idea in Paradise that I can try and recruit a doctor from. Paradise? Where's that? Usopp asked and Luffy just sighed. I will tell you all only once, so you better answer anyone else that asks that question. Luffy said before taking out the map that he had kept from his encounters in Orange Town. It showed 2 large lines that make longitude, another for latitude, and finally 4 sections in each corner of the map. See that the north and south blue are separated by the Grand Line? Everyone nodded. But this line, Luffy pointed to the one that was the latitudinal on the map, is the red line. Made entirely out of indestructible rock that separates the west and east blue. But it also separates the Grand Line into 2, starting here at Reverse Mountain. Luffy then pointed at the red line near the east blue, with the name Logia Town. And the part of the Grand Line that starts on the other side of Reverse Mountain from the east blue is called Paradise, while the final part of the Grand Line is called the New World. Then why is it called Paradise if it is also called the Pirate's Graveyard? Alvida demanded, and Luffy just smirked. Paradise is just a name for those who sail in the New World who also sailed Paradise, calling it because that part of the Grand Line is like that in comparison to the dangers in the New World. The New World is that dangerous, to make the Pirate's Graveyard look like Paradise, Usopp shouted, and Luffy nodded. That is all we need to worry about here in the East Blue, Usopp. Everyone, we still need a navigator and Nami is going to be it. I don't care what you have to say, but if you object, you will then become my enemy. And trust me, my enemies never last past the first day if they tried to harm my crew. Luffy threatened and silenced anyone from trying to get Luffy to see why he could just give up on Nami. XXXXX. And speaking of whom, when Genzo left the infirmary and got everyone more than willing to die to fight the fishmen pirates, they encountered Nami again, but she was running away from Arlong Park in tears, saying that she is going to do better and steal another 100 million berries to buy the village. But Genzo just won't take any more of this and ignored her attempts to stop them with a knife. It turned out that when Nami ran from the tangerine groves, she confronted Arlong. She accused him of tipping the marines and breaking his promise not to harm the village and give it to Nami for 100 million berries. But Arlong laughed at it all and cruelly said that he had kept his part of the deal, but Nami never counted on Arlong freely stealing her money, all her efforts to save the village. Nami then fled Arlong Park to try and stop the townspeople because she had a grave feeling that they will take Nijiko getting shot very badly, and she was right. Now, with no money left and all the townspeople being sent to their defeats by Arlong, Nami couldn't even find the energy to move from her spot. Then she saw the one thing that caused it all, her brand of Arlong's flag mark. It was like it mocked her and reminded Nami of Arlong's sick and sadist laugh. And it was enough to cause her to go mad and stab herself on the arm, right where the mark was, as if she tried to erase all the bad memories that the mark had caused her. All the while, ranting and yelling of Arlong's name non-stop while she caused a large wound on her whole arm. But then, Nami felt someone on her arm, gently stopping her from hurting herself since she froze at the touch. The touch of warm, smooth and yet calloused skin that seemed to be an impossible sensation, but Nami knew who it was. Looking up, Nami saw the love of her life, looking down on her, Luffy. After that same knife was tossed aside, Nami didn't even get up. Not even the sight of the boy that she wanted to be with could bring her spirits up. Nami's heart was clouded and hurt too much. What the hell are you doing here, Luffy? You don't know anything about this. No, I don't. That was a lie, but it was better than telling the truth and wound Nami's feelings even more. Then go. Scram. Get off this island, leave, leave. Go away. Nami tried to get her point by reaching for the closest thing to her, the sand among the dirt road. She was standing on her knees. But after a few swipes that only got Luffy's pants dirty too. No one cared about that. Nami stopped as that too hurt pretty badly. Luffy, Nami said with her voice so broken that it was just about to shatter. Help, me. Nami was no longer the feisty and confident girl with a knack for thievery and treasure anymore. Just a poor, scared and broken girl who needs rescuing more than any other time in her life. Luffy said nothing, just took his hat, his most prized treasure that toppled even his own life, and placed it on Nami's head. Then he walked past her without even worrying about his hand before taking in a huge breath. He will pay. Hearing that and remembering how Luffy had always threatened and even beaten anyone foolish enough to even touch his hat, Nami realized that even after everything that had happened to him by Nami hadn't even changed his loyalty and concern or her. This was nothing but a dream to Nami, and now, it has actually happened. And as all this was stirring around in Nami's mind, giving her the hope that she thought she had given up on, Luffy was approaching his crew who were sitting in various positions ahead of him. And all of them had shadows covering their eyes, showing that they heard everything and they were not going to back down. "Time to go wild, everyone," Luffy simply said. "Right." They all said in perfect unison that got Nami to cover her mouth at it all. They were still going to fight the Arlong pirates, not for the fame or glory that it gave them but for how those pirates had hurt Nami, both physically and emotionally. Meanwhile, good work Yu, Karubi and Hatchin, Arlong said looking at the top-ranking officers of his crew under himself. They intercepted a marine ship from outside the border of Konami village with the promise of saving the townspeople but instead tried to defeat Arlong and gain more fame with their posit in his marines. They failed in their overconfidence and paid the ultimate price at the hands of only 3 fishmen. That will teach them to try anything against us and our empire. But what about those last 2 pathetic humans that came by recently? Chu was a fishman that closely looked like that of a smelt whiting with his skin color and the shape of his mouth. Chu is muscular, blue-skinned, and has thick lips. His Arlong pirate's tattoo is seen on his right shoulder. He wears a necklace, a striped blue vest, dark brown leather pants, and sandals. Karubi was based off of a ray with large fins that were located at the skin of his arms. Karubi has the typical appearance of a martial artist, with a dark blue gi and a black belt. His hair is tied into a straight ponytail. And Hatchin was definitely based off an octopus with 6 arms with 2 legs that made the 8 tentacles of a normal octopus. He has pink skin and gray hair styled with 5 spikes. He has a muscular build and has suction cups on his 6 arms, which he can use to cling onto walls. Hatchin has a tattoo in the shape of a sun on his forehead. While most fishmen have webbed hands, octopus fishmen and women do not, as neither Hatchin nor Octopaco have webbed hands. Oh, those 2, they claimed to be friends of pirate hunter Zoro but they were really weak, so much that pushovers are stronger than those 2. Karubi said while everyone laughed at the mere idea of being threatened by those 2. Then something happened and they all lost their voice when the sealed gates to their headquarters had shattered from the force equal to that of an explosion. "I see that you are still here, Arlong," Luffy said with his stance barely even twitching out of place. "I am actually glad you are." "Who the hell are you?" "XXXXX. The name is Luffy. Monkey D. Luffy, a pirate," Luffy said as he simply walked over to Arlong who was still in his throne, looking angrier than interested or even uninterested. "Hey," one of the Arlong pirates didn't take this better than his captain and tried to stop Luffy by standing in front of him. "You better go home or you will get it. You don't know what you are dealing with. We are the ARRGH. That same foolish and hard-headed pirate found out how it hurts to be hit by a cannonball but he didn't move an inch before fainting and he don't even hear the sound of someone being knocked into a stone wall. I know who you are. You are the stuff that made Nami hate almost everyone that sails the sea. The very seas that she wanted to sail all her life," Luffy said in a low tone while kicking away the destroyed remains of Arlong's throne while the fishman in question was getting out of the hole made with his impression. "And as for you Arlong, that and 1,000 more is for what you did to my navigator and my girl." Arlong then growled before smirking while his crew laughed. "Your girl? You mean that you are doing this because that naive bitch Nami had snagged a boy who is the same so she could get back at us? She is sure pathetic." The Arlong pirates could have said more if the same pirate and a couple beside him didn't get hit and knocked out by an unseen force. "No one asked for your opinion, fishmen who hate us for your own indifference to us," Luffy retorted and never moved his frown, not even when the Arlong pirates tried to charge at him. Instead, they were intercepted by Alvida, Zoro and Sanji with close combat while some were blasted by Usopp at a sniper's distance. "You all deal with the small fry, take your pick, but keep them out of my way." Luffy could count on Johnny and Yosaku at the gates, keeping the townspeople out for their own safety. "Got it, Captain. We love to have fun too," Zoro said while the others agreed in their own way. "So you think that you and your pathetic human crew can stand up to your superiors, Well, I will just kill you all, one by one and then force that bitch to conquer this ocean." Arlong tried to intimidate Luffy and his crew despite his own crewmates getting gunned down easily and away from both captains. "Then you should have seen more of the world, other than wasting time with the East Blue. The world's weakest ocean, you coward and bully," Luffy said and Arlong growled at that remark. "What in the world would your old captain say if he saw you now?" Luffy smirked to see Arlong snarling, too angry to even mock anymore. "Momu, come to me," Arlong shouted to the vast ocean by the opposite set of gates to the landside entrance. And from the waters came something that shouldn't be outside the Grand Line. A sea king, like the one named Momu. Momu is a giant sea cow. It has a big round nose with a gold nose ring, cow-esque face and horns, green spots throughout its body. "Now get them," Arlong shouted but Umi, Luffy whispered and everyone was shocked to see that the Lord of the Coast, which is supposed to be more around Dawn Island, is here at Arlong Park instead. And what is more, the Lord of the Coast is a much smaller and thus weaker form of a sea king. And yet Momu is more scared of Umi than vice versa. Luffy couldn't have trained Umi that much and under such a short time, couldn't he? Feast to your heart's content. Umi started at the feast that his master had addressed the Arlong pirates, including Momu, as and then bore a hungry look with his tongue out for extra effect. The Arlong pirates then started to panic, but this had only made it easier for Umi to ignore Momu and devour up to 3 fishmen in his mouth. And Umi did it like a bird trying to peck at a worm or a chicken nibbling on feed spread their feet. Brothers! Arlong shouted in horror at the sight. Stop that beast, Momu! Arlong got into action and with a stare. Momu actually got aggressive and charged at Umi. But to get a hit is easier said than done since Umi may be smaller and less physically stronger, but because of that, Umi was faster and able to avoid Momu's advances and land plenty of hits considering what a big target Momu was. Like fighting a giant Arlong, it doesn't matter if ignore our hits, they all are easier targets and enough strikes can break through and bring him down with the help of his arrogance. Luffy said in an honest and experienced tone with wise words that were just mocking Arlong for the fishman's tactics that the latter had sent out early in the game in an effort to try and change the tide in his favor for the rest of the battle. The one that has just got started. And that is always a mistake to make. Shut up, I don't take words from a naked ape who still doesn't know who he is going against. Arlong shouted at Luffy, who didn't even move from his spot until the sound of flesh severely cut, then bones shattering. A loud gunshot paired with a loud splash, and finally, a deafening roar as Momu lay defeated right in front of his eyes. And I don't take words from a child such as yourself who thought that you could ascend to greatness by dragging your weight with those who can't fight back and can't help it. Luffy smirked as Arlong realized that his crew had been destroyed within minutes while trying to intimidate Luffy into surrendering. Shut up and die. Arlong charged within punch and Luffy only smiled at that and sent another to match it out. And they went at it pretty fiercely, with both captains getting lucky hits when their guard was done in the midst of the action, but soon, it was clear who had the upper hand. Damn it, you are really annoying. That is all you say to a naked ape? That is proving you wrong that all humans are weak. You just never tell us what you mean by weak. Luffy said and dodged a clumsy right hook that he saw a few minutes ahead. I mean, are we physically weak? Mentally weak? Emotionally weak? Weak in spirit? Weak in soul? Luffy fired away while ordered to get Arlong even angrier. Shut up. Now you will really die once I am done with you. Arlong then dove into the waters around the Arlong Park Tower, leaving Luffy literally hanging high and dry with only his senses at hand to survive any attack. Shaku Datsu, shark darts. Arlong had emerged out of the water with the speed and force of a torpedo, and everyone saw that Arlong had struck Luffy head-on and didn't get to see Luffy try to block it. But instead of yells of pain, there was still that same chuckle that both frightened and relieved everyone present. When the smoke cleared, they saw that Luffy had managed to protect himself from the Shaku Datsu attack by clutching Arlong by the very same sawtooth that he was proud of. The one that is supposed to be sharper than any spear and stronger than any sword, unbreakable. But not today. Arlong screamed as Luffy not only held him by the tooth but also sent him into a corner of the tower's base and foundation with the help of his stretching powers. And all this had helped Luffy's physical strength to break off the sawtooth of Arlong's. But Luffy wasn't fooled as Arlong stayed in the walls that the former had tossed and dragged around like a rag doll, so Luffy just stood there with Arlong's sawtooth nose in hand, not even drawing any blood from the sharp points. And just like that, Arlong appeared, but not without a weapon and something off about his heavy breathing and shaking. Once he locked eyes with Luffy, everyone saw something that they only witnessed in enraged sea canes. That's the Kiribachi, Nami shouted, now among the crowds. She had spent the whole time at home with Luffy's hat on her head and wrapping up her own wound using basic first aid. The reason she was at Arlong Park was so she won't be counted out of the action. She refused to be called too weak to fight for herself. Arlong only uses it when he is really angry. The Kiribachi is a giant black pole with 6 saw-toothed patterned black blades, resembling a shark's saw-like teeth. Its handle is that of a katana's, but has no guard. And Arlong had held it very tightly in his grasp. He is going to be serious this time. Blades instead of fists? I am fine with that, Luffy said, taking out his own sword, his katana. Let's begin. Luffy then charged, in which Arlong also did with his own weapon. After one clash had left with something to be desired, they went at it again, and Luffy once again had gained the advantage by dealing with blows more powerful than anyone could have guessed. Just what are you, puny human scum? Arlong was now without any holding back or remorse with blows for the kill instead of honor. I told you who I am, and that person is going to be the drunken king of pirates, Luffy said, and then Arlong started to laugh at the seemingly stupid name. So you were expecting me to blow down to a drunken king? You are crazy and weak after all, now die. Arlong tried to get an edge, but instead, Luffy forced him back with his eyes blacked out. Then take the power of a drunken king. Luffy's body then budged with muscle and his grasp was now stronger than iron, like on the handle of the katana. Meitei Waryukari. Intoxication drunken frenzy cut. Arlong suddenly felt like his balance had gotten soft and unstable, and he could even see where the tip of Luffy's katana was until he felt the cut on both his front and back. What is DSIS? Arlong even talked drunk in his thoughts, and it was worrying him for once. And it was that same worry that lowered his guard for this. Chu by Kiwayurasukir, let one's guard lower by sake slice. As if Luffy was taking this an opportunity. Arlong's felt like his body was sliced up with all the pain, but then... Enough! Arlong shouted, not feeling the drunk-like effects anymore. And then realized that Luffy was still there like before and with nothing that proved Luffy had been cutting him. You dared to meddle with my thief and navigator. You dared set foot on my island. You dared to make a fool of me in Kokoyashi village and here, in my headquarters and in the face of the humans that I rightfully rule over. I had it all and you dared take it away. Because none of it was ever yours, Arlong. You didn't buy this island. You stole it. Nami was never one of you. You forced her to become such. And the townspeople that you treated like dirt were never yours. You bullied and abused them into serving over you. Luffy said. I am not a thief as good as Nami, but I stole nothing from you. You had nothing that is even worth stealing to begin with, not even your pride. Damn it. Arlong just couldn't take any of this for one more minute. I will kill you with this. Arlong positioned himself with his teeth baring. Shaku Tusu, shark tooth drill. Arlong charged with his body spinning like a drill, with teeth ready to bite down and tear up what gets in their clutches. But Luffy still wasn't worried. In fact, there were a few of the unlimited dangers of the world that do worry this boy. He just braced for an attack of his own. Gomu Gomu no spring shot. Luffy then coiled his right fist and shot it right into the head of the spinning drill made of shark teeth. When that happened, Arlong couldn't bid down on Luffy's fist and was sent right into the tower in Arlong Park. Seeing that he had caused some internal damage as well as sending Arlong to a place that the only person that knew was Nami. And she started to realize what Luffy was going to do and braced herself since the young captain was still unpredictable. Meanwhile, inside the tower, Luffy followed his own trail of destruction until he found Arlong trying to recover from that mean and unseen punch to the face that would leave a mark to remember for a lifetime. So this is the room from where Nami felt the most distress. Luffy muttered as she waited for Arlong to get up along with his kiribachi that somehow stayed in his hand even when Arlong tried to use Shaku Tusu on him. I see that you have found the room. The room where Nami spent 8 long years making all the maps needed to conquer this ocean and the others as well. Arlong laughed as if to boast on how he had Nami as his navigator for years compared to how Luffy had Nami for days. Luffy ignored him and followed the trail of something faint but painfully familiar to Luffy's nose. It was at a desk with an unfinished map on it with all the tools needed, but Luffy wasn't interested in all but one. The pen that had a feather at the end and a tip on the other. This pen, it has blood on it. Luffy said with his anger clearly building. And Luffy had a good idea whose blood was it. Nami's. It must be the blood that Nami had to bear with on her hands as she was forced to make maps day and night, endlessly as part of her life of abuse, being the reluctant navigator to the Arlong pirates. That's right. Luffy really didn't want to hear Arlong's voice right now but said nothing as Arlong placed the kiribachi at Luffy's neck. That is Nami's pen, the very one that she had used to make me maps for 8 years. She is nothing like the rest of the fifthly humans that bow to our holy power. She is a bright girl with promise to be the best navigator in the world, and she will be mine as well. Can you use her as well as I can? That was it. Now Luffy has snapped himself. He didn't say anything still but instead, placed the pen with dry blood on the floor and grasped one of the shark teeth like blades on the weapon with a fierce grip. Arlong then noticed that he couldn't, not even with his fishman's strength, budge his weapon at all. That was when Luffy finally spoke while shattering any nearby blade. Use! Luffy shouted, which actually got Arlong to back off as Luffy effortlessly shattered the kiribachi into pieces while standing up. You claim to treat Nami like a part of your crew like you treat your own kind. You lied. You just want her for what she does best by claiming to give her what she wants. That's a lie. Arlong wondered why he was allowing Luffy to talk him down or couldn't move to strike while Luffy wasn't. Imprisoned here in this cell of a room. And when you took her village, her homeland, and enslaved the townspeople. What is worse is that you killed her mother. Arlong flinched. You ruined her life and forced her to do what she loves, what she dreamed of, what she wants to do with her life. You forced her to do all that under her mother's killer. You made her hate her dreams, what her mother gave for her. And you dare say that you are using her like a tool? I will never forgive you, Arlong. Luffy then kicked one of the walls open from the inside out, knocking down one of the piles of maps. Never. Then Luffy took out both his katana and rapier and proceeded to tear the room apart, right in front of Arlong's eyes. Desks, bookshelves, and the maps were all getting destroyed, and the fishman tyrant was getting angry by the second. Damn you, boy. Outside, everyone was almost panicking to see that from inside the tower were various debris to all but Nami, who recognized every single piece that fell to the ground. She then cried again, but of joy to see what had bonded her, had caused her unbearable pain, and worse of all, forced her to do what she thought she will throw away her life for. It was all getting destroyed, by the boy she asked to do it with all she had left. her tears of pain and sadness. Back in the room, Luffy was interrupted from his seemingly mindless destruction by Arlong, who couldn't be any angrier. "Damn you, human. You are destroying all the work that Nami had spent 8 years making. You are ruining my resources to rule all the seas. I will never let you walk out alive." Arlong yelled like a madman until Luffy head-butted him in the face in order to get free and continue wrecking at anything in the room, all the way to the foundation itself. "You can save your breath, Arlong. Nami will never come back to this room. She hates it, she wants it destroyed, and I will make that happen, with or without your help," Luffy shouted as Arlong was losing his sanity and trying to hack at the room he was trying to save in order to get at Luffy. And Nami doesn't just want this gone, she wants the entire Arlong Park gone. It is nothing but pain and bad memories and growing hate. It deserves to vanish. And then, Luffy sent his left leg up through the ceiling and even higher with several extra meters. Gomu Gomu no, Gum Gum. But as Luffy was preparing his attack, Arlong got back up while degrading his Kiribachi weapon. "Arlong Park will never fall to a puny naked ape like you. I will take back Nami and rebuild, and no one will stop me. Don't you ever look down on all fishmen." Arlong then braced to use his Shaku Tusu again as a last resort, but couldn't even feel the pain as his teeth broke once he clamped onto Luffy's body, only to hear, "Oh no, axe." Arlong felt like some kind of heavy mast or something had landed on his back and forced him down floor after floor until he hit the base floor with enough force left over to cause something of an earthquake. And once that was to be felt by all, the flag from atop finally fell and shattered on the ground. Back in the room, Luffy smiled. "And don't you ever look down on the power of a rubber band, like me." Then Luffy kept smiling and looking up to see that the duel had finally taken its toll on the tower, the only thing left standing of Arlong Park and the empire built around it. Nami, Luffy could only think to himself as rocks and other debris continued to fall around himself. "It's all over. You're free now. And forever." And just like that, in one go, the entire tower collapsed on its own, leaving nothing left to be considered intact. Chubai Kiwairasukir, as if Luffy was taking this an opportunity. Arlong's felt like his body was sliced up with all the pain, but then, "Enough!" Arlong shouted, not feeling the drunk-like effects anymore, and then realized that Luffy was still there like before and with nothing that proved Luffy had been cutting him. "You dared to meddle with my thief and navigator. You dared set foot on my island. You dared to make a fool of me in Kokoyashi village and here, in my headquarters and in the face of the humans that I rightfully rule over. I had it all and you dared take it away. Because none of it was ever yours, Arlong. You didn't buy this island. You stole it. Nami was never one of you. You forced her to become such. And the townspeople that you treated like dirt were never yours. You bullied and abused them into serving over you." Luffy said, "I am not a thief as good as Nami, but I stole nothing from you. You had nothing that is even worth stealing to begin with, not even your pride." "Damn it." Arlong just couldn't take any of this for one more minute. "I will kill you with this." Arlong positioned himself with his teeth baring. Shaku Tusu, Arlong charged with his body spinning like a drill, with teeth ready to bite down and tear up what gets in their clutches. But Luffy still wasn't worried. In fact, there were a few of the unlimited dangers of the world that do worry this boy. He just braced for an attack of his own. Gomu Gomu no spring shot. Luffy then coiled his right fist and shot it right into the head of the spinning drill made of shark teeth. When that happened, Arlong couldn't bid down on Luffy's fist and was sent right into the tower in Arlong Park. Seeing that he had caused some internal damage as well as sending Arlong to a place that the only person that knew was Nami. And she started to realize what Luffy was going to do and braced herself since the young captain was still unpredictable. Meanwhile, inside the tower, Luffy followed his own trail of destruction until he found Arlong trying to recover from that mean and unseen punch to the face that would leave a mark to remember for a lifetime. "So this is the room from where Nami felt the most distress," Luffy muttered as she waited for Arlong to get up along with his Kiribachi that somehow stayed in his hand even when Arlong tried to use Shaku Tusu on him. "I see that you have found the room. The room where Nami spent 8 long years making all the maps needed to conquer this ocean and the others as well." Arlong laughed as if to boast on how he had Nami as his navigator for years compared to how Luffy had Nami for days. Luffy ignored him and followed the trail of something faint but painfully familiar to Luffy's nose. It was at a desk with an unfinished map on it with all the tools needed, but Luffy wasn't interested in all but one. The pen that had a feather at the end and a tip on the other. "This pen, it has blood on it," Luffy said with his anger clearly building. And Luffy had a good idea whose blood was it. Nami's. It must be the blood that Nami had to bear with on her hands as she was forced to make maps day and night, endlessly as part of her life of abuse, being the reluctant navigator to the Arlong pirates. That's right, Luffy really didn't want to hear Arlong's voice right now but said nothing as Arlong placed the Kiribachi at Luffy's neck. "That is Nami's pen, the very one that she had used to make me maps for 8 years. She is nothing like the rest of the fifthly humans that bow to our holy power. She is a bright girl with promise to be the best navigator in the world and she will be mine as well. Can you use her as well as I can?" That was it, now Luffy has snapped himself. He didn't say anything still but instead, placed the pen with dry blood on the floor and grasped one of the shark teeth-like blades on the weapon with a fierce grip. Arlong then noticed that he couldn't, not even with his fishman strength, budge his weapon at all. That was when Luffy finally spoke while shattering any nearby blade. Use! Luffy shouted, which actually got Arlong to back off as Luffy effortlessly shattered the Kiribachi into pieces while standing up. You claim to treat Nami like a part of your crew like you treat your own kind. You lied. You just want her for what she does best by claiming to give her what she wants. That's a lie. Arlong wondered why he was allowing Luffy to talk him down or couldn't move to strike while Luffy wasn't. You were the one that imprisoned here in this cell of a room. And when you took her village, her homeland, and enslaved the townspeople. What is worse is that you killed her mother. Arlong flinched. You ruined her life and forced her to do what she loves, what she dreamed of, what she wants to do with her life. You forced her to do all that under her mother's killer. You made her hate her dreams, what her mother gave for her. And you dare say that you were using her like a tool? I will never forgive you, Arlong. Luffy then kicked one of the walls open from the inside out, knocking down one of the piles of maps. Never. Then Luffy took out both his katana and rapier and proceeded to tear the room apart, right in front of Arlong's eyes. Desks, bookshelves, and the maps were all getting destroyed, and the fishman tyrant was getting angry by the second. Damn you, boy. Outside, everyone was almost panicking to see that from inside the tower were various debris to all but Nami, who recognized every single piece that fell to the ground. She then cried again, but of joy to see what had bonded her, had caused her unbearable pain, and worst of all, forced her to do what she thought she will throw away her life for. It was all getting destroyed, by the boy she asked to do it with all she had left, her tears of pain and sadness. Back in the room, Luffy was interrupted from his seemingly mindless destruction by Arlong, who couldn't be any angrier. Damn you, human. You are destroying all the work that Nami had spent 8 years making. You are ruining my resources to rule all the seas. I will never let you walk out alive. Arlong yelled like a madman until Luffy head-butted him in the face in order to get free and continue wrecking at anything in the room, all the way to the foundation itself. You can save your breath, Arlong. Nami will never come back to this room. She hates it, she wants it destroyed, and I will make that happen, with or without your help. Luffy shouted as Arlong was losing his sanity and trying to hack at the room he was trying to save in order to get at Luffy. And Nami doesn't just want this gone, she wants the entire Arlong Park gone. It is nothing but pain and bad memories and growing hate. It deserves to vanish. And then, Luffy sent his left leg up through the ceiling and even higher with several extra meters. Gomu Gomu no. But as Luffy was preparing his attack, Arlong got back up while degrading his Kiribachi weapon. Arlong Park will never fall to a puny naked ape like you. I will take back Nami and rebuild, and no one will stop me. Don't you ever look down on all fishmen. Arlong then braced to use his Shaku Tusu again as a last resort. But couldn't even feel the pain as his teeth broke once he clamped onto Luffy's body, only to hear, "Oh no." Arlong felt like some kind of heavy mast or something had landed on his back and forced him down floor after floor until he hit the base floor with enough force left over to cause something of an earthquake. And once that was to be felt by all, the flag from atop finally fell and shattered on the ground. Back in the room, Luffy smiled. And don't you ever look down on the power of a rubber band, like me. Then Luffy kept smiling and looking up to see that the duel had finally taken its toll on the tower, the only thing left standing of Arlong Park and the empire built around it. Nami. Luffy could only think to himself as rocks and other debris continued to fall around himself. It's all over. You are free now. And forever. And just like that, in one go, the entire tower collapsed on its own, leaving nothing left. There it is, Logia Town, our last stop before Reverse Mountain. Luffy shouted while gazing directly ahead with a telescope in his right hand. And he was doing this from the recovered King's Gourd. And it seems that he was the only one to know that Nami only took the treasure from the ship but hid it from the Arlong pirates. Everyone else was sure that Nami had destroyed it and let it sink. You sure sound excited, Captain, but is that town more exciting than me? Now then, any man will try to sort this out with a panicked voice, with the fear of breaking up with the wrong answer in thought, but Luffy was nothing like that. Never, nothing will ever top being with you, Nami-chan. Luffy said and boldly kissed his girl, now in a real relationship, with enough power to steal away any strength in her legs. Not that Nami didn't like the feeling of being so light she was suddenly floating with the clouds. And that is what they call being on cloud 9. Besides, you are excited to go there too yourself. Nami giggled, you got me. As always. But seriously, they have the best clothes anyone can buy in the East Blue. Luffy could only chuckle because Nami's love of clothes is only bested by her love of treasure and money. Typical of a girl of Nami's age, and only Luffy himself could afford to have such a woman as a girlfriend. And with all that money you gave me, I will definitely fill out my wardrobe again. For the record, it was no problem. They didn't want all that money anyways, and now you are no longer in debt. You can use it for yourself. Luffy said, and Nami nodded very violently. Her love of money was still present and going strong. Just remember not to steal my head, okay? Okay Luffy, you're too good of a kisser to do that, Nami said in a sweet tone that still scared Luffy, but he smiled anyways. It was true that it was tempting for Nami to really go for Luffy's head as well as the other heavyweights of the crew. Flashback begins. You raised the price again, Nami said in a stern tone as she places a 50 berry coin in the deposit box that the news coos are seagull that deliver mail or newspapers, and they are distinguishable by the newsman hats they wear as protocol along with the box of papers they carry on their necks, was presenting while mimicking a soldier's salute. If you do it again, then I will go somewhere else to buy a good newspaper, she said in an unpleased tone that the news coo ignored and flew off to get back to work. I don't see what the big deal is, Nami. It isn't like you are still in debit and you have all that money you got back at Arlong Park, so why are being stingy? Usopp said from his position on the king's gourd while surrounded by some kind of chemistry kit. I know, and because of that, I now can keep all the money I lay my hands on and I am going to buy what I want, Nami said like it was no big deal. And if you want money then get your own, because I am never going to have enough for myself.
Whatever, and now be quiet, Usopp said with a huff and his free hand facing its palm into Nami's direction while his other hand had some kind of vial along with a strange liquid inside. I am working on a new formula for a new kind of Tabasco sauce that is so hot that once my enemies get a whiff, they won't stand. Usopp's boasting was interrupted when someone landed on his sit, spilling the contents of the vial into Usopp's eyes. Chance. Oh.
As Usopp withered with his eyes feeling like they were burning up, it was revealed that Sanji was the one who landed on the sniper and was actually ignoring Kaya fussing and trying to help her boyfriend. What the hell was that, Captain?
Sanji, it is one thing to waste time guarding the grove of tangerines we planted on the ship instead of being in the kitchen, Luffy said with a stern and irritated tone to match Sanji's. But it is another to threaten and keep anyone from entering, even Nojiko. After all, she is coming to look after the grove and Nami, so let her both parts of her job. Sanji. Captain's orders. Sanji tried to protest, saying that it is his duty as a gentleman to protect the girls' tangerine grove from the boys. But when everyone, even Usopp somehow, scowled at him and pointed towards the kitchen, Sanji got up and walked towards that part of the ship in deep depression. Why did you get a cook like him, Captain? Zeph will never had caused this type of trouble, Zoro said with a couple of them agreeing.
Because Zeph said himself that there is no longer a good reason for him to be a pirate, and Sanji is the one with a dream that will get fulfilled if he stayed at the Baratie. So are you saying that I made a bad choice? Luffy answered, and with an edge on his tone to show his point, is getting a little irritated with slight disloyalty from his crew. They all just shook their heads violently. If you don't like what Sanji does, then you go and make us dinner yourself, because any crew needs a cook and Sanji is the one. Okay, Captain, they all said while going back to what they were doing. Zoro and Jin went back to their naps. Kaya continued to try and help Usopp. Alvito went back to relaxing with Nami, and Najiko went to the groves now that there isn't a perverted, sexist guardsman to keep anyone out. Luffy made sure of it and everything else on the ship while at the helm, following both the wind and the compass to their final destination of the East Blue. That is until a certain pair of girls screamed at the top of their lungs, so much that even the ship jumped in shock like the rest of the crew. They all did the same when they saw 4 sheets of paper fall out of Nami's newspaper. Flashback ends. It was bounty posters, with a criminal or pirate's profile and the amount of berries that the government is willing to pay for their head as proof. And just like what Luffy said, his victories over the top pirates in the East Blue, it was time for his own bounty. And now just Luffy but 3 more fighters in the crew also got their first bounties. They all went as followed. Wanted. Dead or alive Monkey D, Straw Hat, Luffy, Liber Glade. 1.
Bounty. 80 million berries. The profile photo showed Luffy in all his glory and his swords drawn out, mostly likely when he was in that somewhat fierce sword duel with Arlong. Luffy liked it anyways, and so did Nami, saying that it made her man look even more macho.
Wanted. Dead or alive, Black Leg, Sanji bounty, 39 million.
Sanji's profile was something to tolerate since it showed him covered in smoke and with a vicious smirk on his face. Sanji just hoped that the girls will be at least interested in him, which didn't work on any of the women as Luffy's crew.
Wanted. Dead or alive, Pirate Hunter, Roronoa Zoro.
Bounty. 50 million. Zoro's picture of his own glory when fighting the Arlong pirates with his own sword drawn out to make him look either like a scary swordsman or a hardened warrior. Zoro didn't care about it, only that his bounty was slightly greater than Sanji's. Wanted. Dead or alive. Man Demon, Jin. Bounty. 35 million.
And this one is different since Jin proclaimed that the profile pic was reused, to show the same glare and composition that got him called the Man Demon, long before he got his first bounty. And that was the 4 bounties for Luffy's pirate crew, but considering that they really mean business, they need to come up with a name for themselves.
Luffy suggested the name to be Straffut Pirates. Despite how silly it looked on paper, it seemed to stick to their tongue somehow. What is more, Luffy said that he got from his friend in the Grand Line that every pirate at his league had their crew named after their nickname, so Straffut Pirates is just used for a good name and for good measure if they find themselves at that level as well.
Regardless of Luffy's personal reason for the name, everyone agreed to call themselves the Straw Hat Pirates, and for anyone that asks who they are, the crew will proclaim their name with pride. They are pirates after all, only they can stop themselves from doing what they want. And as if that will happen, Ohio, in a certain town and in a certain building that has the symbol and colors of the Marines. Someone was in a room filled with smoke but didn't seem to mind. He just kept piling rocks in a tower that looked like it was going to fall at the wrong move. That was why he was trying to stack the latest rock gently and slowly, but... Captain. A foolish Marine barged in and slammed the door open, causing the rocks to fall much to belief of whoever was stacking them. Oh, sorry Captain. That same Marine tried to apologize, but that man still didn't say a word. Anyways, we got reports from headquarters that there are 3 new pirates with their first bounties. Monkey D, Straw Hat, Luffy, aka the Liber Glade, Roronoa Zoro, the Pirate Hunter, Blackfoot, Sanji, and Man Demon, Jin. And they all seem to heading here, Captain. You need to calm down. That same man seemed to be tired of hearing one of his subordinates as being addressed as Captain. He just walked over to open one of the shut windows and let the smoke float out and into the clouds. And if they are coming here, then they are going to try for the Grand Line for sure. But Captain, that same Marine protested. The Grand Line is also called the Pirate's Graveyard, and since no one has returned when the Pirate King died, no pirate had ever tried the Grand Line. And what better reason than to risk themselves coming here, soldier? The man said before taking a jacket with what appears to be a large G detached with a strap. Sorry, Captain Smoker. The Marine finally revealed who he was talking to, and when the room cleared, a good view of this Marine captain came. Smoker is a muscular white-haired man, with the 2 cigars alight at once. Quite fitting of his name is Smoker. He wears a large thick white and blue specialist Marine jacket which he keeps open, with greenish fur lining the neck, wrists and hem. Many cigars are strapped to the jacket, which bears the kanji for justice written on the back of it. Finally, his hair has a white tone and the fur on his coat was blue. And you better remember that for any reason that pirates should come here, I will capture them and I will be ready for them when they first arrive here. Logatown, the town of the beginning and end. Where Gold Roger died. Smoker then passed that Marine who had just one last thing to say. But wait, Captain. The bounty posters just came and you didn't even look at them. He tried to get Smoker's attention. But the captain ignored him and continued to leave the building, to start hunting. Oh man, how am I going to break this to Captain to look for a kid with a straw hat and a couple of swords on hand? And that Marine never got his answer for the rest of that evening and could only wait until the pirates do arrive and see to that Smoker realizes that it is difficult to find something if you have no idea on what to look for. Maybe Smoker will encounter this Straw Hat pirate, but arresting on the spot does have a very low chance of happening. Only fate or whatever sees to the events happening can tell. XXXXX. And finally, the Straw Hat Pirates had arrived in Logatown at the brink of dawn. It was a settlement like most in the Eat Blue, complete with a pier filled with boats already. A gate that gave away the name of the town and people walking the streets doing their business. And speaking of which, there is a lot of business for the pirates here before they can approach Reverse Mountain and then try for the Grand Line. Alright everyone, we have priorities to discuss. We can't be here for longer than a day, so we can't waste time getting our business here done before we will have to leave for the Grand Line. Luffy announced as soon as the King's Gourd had landed in a remote location since it was too dangerous to do the pier. Why are we in such a rush, Captain? Jin asked. I mean, this is supposed to be the best place for any sailor, marine or pirate, in all the East Blue. Why can't we just enjoy it while we can? You don't understand who is the Marine captain here, Jin. He is Captain Smoker, and ever since he first became captain here, there wasn't a single pirate he hadn't captured in his career. Luffy explained, and that impressive record was amazing to non-pirate sailors but not for the Straw Hats. And that is because he has the power of the Moku Moku no Mi. It is a logia type and you guys are not ready to fight one yet. A logia? Usopp parroted and Luffy nodded. Logia is one of the 3 types of Akuma no Mi categories. Take my Akuma no Mi powers for example. Luffy began his lecture. Mine both fall under the Paramecia category. They are the most common of all Akuma no Mi, and they are labeled as they can either enhance one's physical strength, affect one's environment, or even produce a certain substance. In fact, Kaya's and Alvida's Akuma no Mi powers also fall under this category. But didn't you say that there were 3 types including Paramecia and Logia? Sanji brought up and Luffy nodded. The one I haven't explained yet is the zone type. They are entirely of allowing the eater access their original form, that of a certain animal or a hybrid with attributes and strengths of both. Luffy said, and his crew were in awe and imagined themselves of their favorite animal and transforming into it at will. What is more, to turn into a hybrid as well. But I seriously doubt we will encounter a user of a zone Akuma no Mi here in the East Blue, but there is still I have to explain about the rarest and supposedly, the most powerful of all Akuma no Mi types. You mean the logia type that you brought up a few minutes ago? Nami asked and Luffy nodded once again. One thing is for sure is that logia are definitely the most rare of most Akuma no Mi and the most dangerous to pirates like you guys. A logia allows the eater to transform into a certain element or form of nature to become intangible to allow attacks. Now the Straw Hats were really getting the point Luffy is trying to make. What is more, they can even use their logia powers to disastrous effects so they can considered invincible in all the blues, but in the Grand Line, there are plenty of people that can take on a logia and win. Who? Jin asked, his curiosity piqued. People who have mastered their haki, and more specially, Busashoku haki, as that can allow the user to reach the solid self of a logia to deal damage. Luffy answered and saw that everyone after Usopp and Kaido were all clueless about haki. And don't you ask because I never find myself repeating the same lecture, so when people ask, you will have to answer. Understand? This time, Luffy addressed everyone in his crew and they all nodded. Good. Now to more important business. Now you know better to avoid a marine named Smoker. Luffy begun. We need to get the right about supplies because there isn't much settlements to restock in the Grand Line. And that means Sanji, you are going to take this to the market for food and bring only the best you can find. Sanji caught a small sack that had enough money for the entire crew. And to make sure you don't get distracted, Jin will be going with you. When Sanji tried to protest, he was met with the same dread and displeasing frown on Luffy's face that dared him to say, no, to him. Usopp, you will need to get ammo for both your rifle and your slingshots as well anything else that a sniper like yourself needs. There should be a store or two that sells such merchandise. You may search and ask for directions but never reveal who you are sailing with. Luffy spoke to Usopp who nodded in eager obedience. I personally will take Zoro to my first stop here and when my business is done, I will have to break up to another place in Logia Town. Hey, Zoro tried to say but he never got any further when Luffy showed his displeasure of being interrupted during assigning his crew to errands. And finally, you four. Luffy pointed to all the women on his crew and including his own girlfriend. They flinched at being pointed at as well as Luffy raising his voice but they all saw his smile. You girls are going here. Have fun. Now everyone was baffled at this turn of events, from serious to carefree. I mean it girls, we are not sailing so we don't need to treat Logia Town like a ship in the middle of the ocean and Jin did say we should enjoy the last stop for heavens knows when and where. So I am giving you a girls outing. And before I forget, Luffy reached into the ship with the help of his powers to bring out a couple of sacks and gave them to Alvida and Nami. That should cover everything. Nami was curious about it since she could have sworn to hear something rustling around in one of the sacks so she took a peek. And screamed at the sight of money bills and golden treasure in a respected sack. What is all this? There should be at least 100 million berries in both sacks. Now everyone's screaming. Their funds had gotten a major backup and the captain never told them that. It is all from Arlong's bounty and from his ruined base. I was going to give it to the people of Kokoyashi village but they refused it and instead asked of me to give it to you Nami. We all agreed that will cover 8 long years of working with the former tyrant. Luffy explained which made Nami scream again, dropped the heavy sacks on Sanji's and Usopp's feet and embraced her boyfriend, kissing him square on the lips. I love you, Luffy. Nami just couldn't hold back in her excitement, and because of that, she also lost all shame in her makeout session. One that was twice the pleasure as Luffy didn't even try to fight back and kissed her back. What is more, Nami felt like she was losing her legs when Luffy got them into some tongue action as well. I can't wait until we leave Luffy. Nami suddenly turned whispering and into Luffy's ear. I will gladly repay you in private if you are up for it. And who am I to deny of you on what you want Nami? You are my navigator and my girl. Luffy whispered back that got Nami to shiver again, in both pleasure and excitement. I will be waiting. Luffy then gently released Nami so she could join Kaya, Alvida and Nijiko with a little embarrassment in her system. No doubt from letting herself go in public and forgetting about any shame with her boyfriend. The men just tried to look away for the fear of getting on Luffy's bad side for looking at his girl in a weird and wrong way. Sanji was on the verge of collapse seeing one of his potential girlfriends make out with the captain, the sigh of being taken first. Now let's go, we are burning daylight and if you don't move, there is going to be more things burning. Luffy causally said, grabbing onto Zoro's shoulder and heading into a certain direction into Logia Town. The crew chuckled at the sight and left according to what Luffy ordered them to do. XXXXX and while everyone left for their assigned errands, Luffy took Zoro like he said and by the word, took, the captain had to drag Zoro to be more precise. Not that Luffy wasn't surprised that Zoro still retained his infamous example of a bad sense of direction. Seriously. Just is Zoro still alive if he gets lost easily? Well here we are, the best sword store in all of Logia Town and possibly the entire East Blue. Luffy said after Zoro was clutching his hair with a painful grumble. Luffy was right. Zoro was about to get lost and Luffy had to drag him on the right trail for every hour walked on the roads. Thankfully for Zoro, it only took 2 hours to get to the store. The shop of arms, Zoro said in disbelief. How original for sure. Yeah, but why did you take that wrong turn when you could see the shop right in front of you? Luffy jabbed at Zoro, who growled. And the two pirates walked in to see the shop owner, who seemed to be delighted to see them. Luffy, you have finally returned. Zoro was surprised, but Luffy waved at the owner, who walked up and shook his hand. Hello Ippon Matsu, I knew that I will find you still in business. Luffy said, like meeting an old friend. Ippon Matsu is a short man, with black hair that goes to the sides of his head. He has tan skin and wears a blue shirt. His nose is red, also. Now I will ask of your skills with my blades. Blood and flesh is bad for their edge. Yeah, considering that you keep getting them covered in such messy stuff. Ippon Matsu chuckled. You should learn someday to kill fast enough to not even leave a speck of dirt on your blade afterwards. Their scabbards could only keep them in shape so much. He then took Luffy's katana and rapier. Hello again Reimei Atami. 2. And Uedoku Toge. 3. I will have you both ready for more action, wherever your master will go. And then Ippon Matsu left for out back of the store to sharpen and clean both weapons. That guy is creepy Luffy. And he has your swords, Zoro shouted, but Luffy just shrugged it off. Say whatever you like about the shop owner. I trust him with any weapon or mine because it was him that granted me those 2 blades through some string pulling, and that I protected his wife from debit collectors. Luffy said, I will never settle for anyone to sharpen and clean my blades, and that is why they will tolerate him. If you try to even touch my blades, then I will not be able to stop the girls from killing you off in retaliation. They are like lovers that don't want anyone to touch them. Luffy had this spookiness and serious tone in his voice, one that gave Zoro the shivers. It took me half the time training on my island to tame them, Zoro. Can you do it in 5 seconds? Zoro knew that his captain was now daring him, and any dare from Monkey D. Luffy will always be crazy and dangerous. And Zoro is not an idiot to take it. Sorry Luffy. I didn't mean it. But while Zoro tried to back out and get away before Luffy starts to get the swordsman too involved. Did you say Luffy? They all turned to see that there was another customer to the shop of arms, one that charged towards the captain. Zoro got on his guard for an enemy trying to get at his captain's head, but instead, Luffy welcomed it in warm arms since. Luffy. The woman ran and landed right into Luffy with arms around his chest. Big brother. Tashigi, you have grown so much again since the last time I seen you with a sword book in hand. Luffy said, as if this woman was his slightly childish, older sister. Zoro just got a good glimpse of this Tashigi woman. Tashigi has dark brown eyes and wears her black hair between chin and shoulder length. She wears rectangular glasses with red frames. Tashigi is wearing short-sleeved shirts of varying different colors and designs, but usually covered them with her white-trimmed, waist-length blue leather coat. She tended to wear blue jeans with black shoes, but has also paired white capris with tan shoes. But there was just something off about this woman with a katana, and when Tashigi finally showed her face in plain view, Zoro had realized it. Hey, he just had to barge in on the sweet reunion in the arms shop. Why do you look like her? Are you a copycat? What? Tashigi snapped in retort. I'm not a copycat, and I always look like this. That is enough. Luffy shouted while getting between both his first mate and this female swordsman. And by the blades in their scabbards and on his belt, Zoro saw that Luffy had gotten them from the creepy shop owner in such short time. I understand that this is this uncanny resemblance, but Tashigi is her own woman, not a copy in any way. Understand? Zoro growled that he still couldn't retort against his captain with that expression on his face. Now I have a personal errand to do before we will leave Logia Town, so do what you want here and don't get lost when you are done. Yes Luffy. Zoro agreed with a mumble that somehow made Tashigi giggle like a young girl. Hey, you are smart about swords, right? Zoro then faced Tashigi to get her attention. Why yeah, Tashigi was still a little nervous around strangers, and especially those who demand of her. Then help me please. Tashigi wondered why Zoro had suddenly turned gentle. I idolized swordsman, pirate or marine, as a boy, and I had been training wit entered the dojo back on my homeland. But I practiced Santoryu, so just having one sword is uncomfortable and makes me feel insecure. I need to find 2 more swords, ones that won't be destroyed by any other. I really need the help. Tashigi nodded, glad to meet someone that is interested in swords, and personally, more interested in her extensive knowledge on swords in general. Then let's see what this cheapskate had to offer. Tashigi offered, and Zoro smiled to hear something like that from such a clumsy and shy girl. The shop owner just wept at the disrespect and that he couldn't be angry about it instead of afraid. And as for Luffy, he had reached his destination right when they started looking in the shop. There it is. Luffy said once he got to the very center of Logia Town, where he wanted to go before he will leave the town and the entire East Blue for the Grand Line. The long-closed execution stand, the very place where Gold Roger himself died 20 years ago. Gold Roger? More like Gold D. Roger. Luffy thought to himself, that's right, to anyone up there that just heard that. It is like me. I possess the D, and this is unavoidable. No matter who has to say. I will show the world why all the liars in their high seats fear the D. That was what Luffy swore at that moment. Luffy, you have finally returned. Zoro was surprised, but Luffy waved at the owner, who walked up and shook his hand. Hello Ippon Matsu, I knew that I will find you still in business. Luffy said, like meeting an old friend. Ippon Matsu is a short man, with black hair that goes to the sides of his head. He has tan skin and wears a blue shirt. His nose is red, also. Now I will ask of your skills with my blades. Blood and flesh is bad for their edge. Yeah, considering that you keep getting them covered in such messy stuff. Ippon Matsu chuckled. You should learn someday to kill fast enough to not even leave a speck of dirt on your blade afterwards. Their scabbards could only keep them in shape so much. He then took Luffy's katana and rapier. Hello again Reimei Atami. 2. And Uedoku Toge. 3. I will have you both ready for more action, wherever your master will go. And then Ippon Matsu left for out back of the store to sharpen and clean both weapons. That guy is creepy Luffy. And he has your swords, Zoro shouted, but Luffy just shrugged it off. Say whatever you like about the shop owner. I trust him with any weapon or mine because it was him that granted me those 2 blades through some string pulling, and that I protected his wife from debit collectors. Luffy said, I will never settle for anyone to sharpen and clean my blades, and that is why they will tolerate him. If you try to even touch my blades, then I will not be able to stop the girls from killing you off in retaliation. They are like lovers that don't want anyone to touch them. Luffy had this spookiness and serious tone in his voice, one that gave Zoro the shivers. It took me half the time training on my island to tame them, Zoro. Can you do it in 5 seconds?
Zoro knew that his captain was now daring him in any dare from Monkey D. Luffy will always be crazy and dangerous. And Zoro is not an idiot to take it. Sorry Luffy. I didn't mean it. But while Zoro tried to back out and get away before Luffy starts to get the swordsman too involved.
Did you say Luffy? They all turned to see that there was another customer to the shop of arms. One that charged towards the captain. Zoro got on his guard for an enemy trying to get at his captain's head, but instead, Luffy welcomed it in warm arms since. Luffy. The woman ran and landed right into Luffy with arms around his chest. Big brother. Tashigi, you have grown so much again since the last time I seen you with a sword book in hand. Luffy said, as if this woman was his slightly childish, older sister. Zoro just got a good glimpse of this Tashigi woman. Tashigi has dark brown eyes and wears her black hair between chin and shoulder length. She wears rectangular glasses with red frames. Tashigi is wearing short-sleeved shirts of varying different colors and designs, but usually covered them with her white-trimmed, waist-length blue leather coat. She tended to wear blue jeans with black shoes, but has also paired white capris with tan shoes. But there was just something off about this woman with a katana, and when Tashigi finally showed her face in plain view, Zoro had realized it. Hey, he just had to barge in on the sweet reunion in the arms shop. Why do you look like her? Are you a copycat? What? Tashigi snapped in retort. I'm not a copycat, and I always look like this.
That is enough. Luffy shouted while getting between both his first mate and this female swordsman. And by the blades in their scabbards and on his belt, Zoro saw that Luffy had gotten them from the creepy shop owner in such short time. I understand that this is this uncanny resemblance, but Tashigi is her own woman, not a copy in any way. Understand?
Zoro growled that he still couldn't retort against his captain with that expression on his face. Now I have a personal errand to do before we will leave Logatown, so do what you want here and don't get lost when you are done. Yes Luffy. Zoro agreed with a mumble that somehow made Tashigi giggle like a young girl. Hey, you are smart about swords, right? Zoro then faced Tashigi to get her attention. Why yeah, Tashigi was still a little nervous around strangers, and especially those who demand of her. Then help me please. Tashigi wondered why Zoro had suddenly turned gentle. I idolized swordsman, pirate or marine, as a boy, and I had been training with swords since I first entered the dojo back on my homeland. But I practiced Santoryu, so just having one sword is uncomfortable and makes me feel insecure. I need to find 2 more swords, ones that won't be destroyed by any other. I really need the help. Tashigi nodded, glad to meet someone that is interested in swords, and personally, more interested in her extensive knowledge on swords in general.
Then let's see what this cheapskate had to offer. Tashigi offered, and Zoro smiled to hear something like that from such a clumsy and shy girl. The shop owner just wept at the disrespect and that he couldn't be angry about it instead of afraid. And as for Luffy, he had reached his destination right when they started looking in the shop.
There it is. Luffy said once he got to the very center of Logatown, where he wanted to go before he will leave the town, and the entire East Blue for the Grand Line. The long-closed execution stand, the very place where Gold Roger himself died 20 years ago. Gold Roger. More like Gall D. Roger. Luffy thought to himself, that's right, to anyone up there that just heard that. It is like me, I possess the D. And this is unavoidable, no matter who has to say. I will show the world why all the liars in their high seats fear the D. That was what Luffy swore at that moment. Elsewhere in Logia Town, and while Luffy was staring at the execution stand, Nami was outside with a couple of overstuffed bags and with Alvida keeping her company, while Najiko was instead a store that happened to be a combo barbershop and tattoo shop, so her sister was getting a new and complete makeover with her hair and body tattoos that she only had to make Nami feel better about her former Arlong own. Wasn't it nice that Captain Kun gave us all this money knowing what we wanted to do here? It was like Luffy knew of this place already and spoiled us did. You are so lucky to have him for a boyfriend, Alvida said to try and start a conversation, but Nami didn't say another word. Alvida didn't mind because her smile, despite the appearance of tears, had gave away for some happy memories that awoke tears of freedom and relief for a lifetime of guilt and pain.
Flashback begins. It was when Luffy had finally defeated Arlong with a finishing move to top off destroying Nami's prison within the tower of Arlong Park. And speaking of which, it was at the time that the battle damage had finally taken its toll on the structure and caused it to collapse completely. Luffy. Nami yelled like never before and joined everyone on edge to see for themselves if the tower had killed a raven-haired captain or not. It didn't matter if they knew about Luffy's Gomu Gomu no Mi powers granting nigh invulnerability to blunt trauma of all kinds. After a while, the debris that once was the proud tower within Arlong Park had moved and stirred once again, to reveal the one man that everyone on the island wanted to see, alive.
Luffy, Captain, Kid, Big Brother, and all the other cries were heard and mixed in with the crowds, inhabitants and pirates alike. But Luffy didn't say a word, just felt the breeze that turned into a strong wind on his battle-war body and messy raven black hair with shadows covering his eyes like the times before. Then he took in a huge breath. Nami. Everyone flinched at Luffy's voice. You're one of us, from now and forever. That was exactly what Nami wanted to hear and broke back into tears of joy again, still wearing Luffy's straw hat. Yes, Captain Luffy. And like their cue on a play script, the rest of the witnessing crowd cheered loud and clear. This was the day they only dreamed of, to be free once again and from the tyranny of the seemingly unstoppable pirate Arla. The majority of inhabitants had intercepted Luffy climbing out of the wreckage and wanted to toss him into the air, but Luffy gently and politely declined for the sake of his exhaustion and battle weariness. And yet, there was still some nasty business to take care of before they can bring out the party music and drinks. Silence. That was the same screeching voice that is the closest thing a human can speak that resembled that of a rat. Chi 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 chi. I see that even Arlong was still a pirate that can be defeated, but since you all had to allow another pirate crew on your island despite hating all pirates in general, I will have to take action as a captain in the Marines. It was a captain all right. It was also Nezumi and his squad of Marine subordinates. I think that all the money and glory from the ruins of Arlong Park will be a good trade for me keeping quiet about this. Everyone was just about to scream when they saw that a menacing man with cactus green hair had appeared out of nowhere and grabbed Nezumi so hard that he screamed. Raining on our parade so soon? You are so rude. Everyone just wants no pirates or any other scum of the seas on their island. Let me go. Men, kill him. Nezumi was still thinking that his status as a marine captain with armed men will be enough to remain untouched and free to do what he wants. But he definitely hadn't heard about Morgan from Shellstown. And his Marines never even moved from their spot. What are you waiting for? Save me and kill him already. Captain Nezumi of the 16th branch within the East Blue, Marine Code 00733. Everyone held their breath when Luffy made way to the greedy Marine, wondering what their savior had in mind for Nezumi. I believe that I got you right on, and for a very important message for all to hear. Hit it, boys. Luffy spoke like a real crime boss, and everyone was surprised to see more of the Marines obeying Luffy instead of Nezumi, a pirate instead of their captain. Regardless, those same Marines activated some kind of tech before showing thumbs up and then took out a transponder snail with the colors of the Marines and even their flag symbol. Greetings, people of the Konami Islands within the East Blue. No one recognized that voice other than Nezumi, who was sweating buckets down his face and collar, but they were under the impression that it was speaking to all those who can heard from any place on the island chain. I, a lowly Marine myself, speak of Marineford, the base of operations for the Marine headquarters. I have been asked by my various superiors to give you all this message, that we are discharging and removing Captain Nezumi and the 16th Marine branch from your islands on the base of neglect and abusing national responsibilities, accepting briberies and housing a pirate crew for 8 years. We will see to it that this will not happen to you all on our behalf. Everyone just couldn't believe it. Marine headquarters had not only listened to their cries but also finally took measures to remove the corruption that aided Arlong in keeping them captured for 8 long years. You stupid pirate boy. I will see to it that the world hates you, that everyone wants you dead, if not then I will kill you myself. Nezumi tried to intimidate Luffy, but he was not be taken seriously as he could even escape Zoro's grasp. You can't kill me with power you don't have anymore, and yet I will let you know that despite me and my crew freeing the island, we will still get bounties of some of our heads. Ignoring the protests to the island of their savior being treated like some kind of prey as well as an outcast instead. And you didn't do a thing to help yourself, so Zoro. Luffy turned to his male first mate, leave him from the boys to take care of. Zoro turned his focus to the Marines and his captain a couple of times before shrugging and throwing Nezumi away and to the men with uniforms and guns as well as hats covering most of their faces. Everyone was still wondering why the Marines had suddenly decided to turn traitor and obey Luffy instead of the former captain. But all that was answered when the Marines shifted their hats to reveal some familiar faces. Mizo, 1. Gary, 1. Kong, 1. Dingo, 1. Everyone kept firing names off like bullets out of a machine gun, and it seemed that Nezumi's Marines that accompanied him to ruin the inhabitants' day were none other than disguised hunters and other residents that got the idea from Luffy himself. But everyone didn't care anymore because the real angry inhabitants had ganged up on the poor and defenseless Nezumi so thick that Luffy or anyone in his crew could no longer see the former Marine captain anymore. Nami just gave Luffy's hat and walked over to the crowd who already had their hit on Nezumi, who looked pretty hideous with all his bruises. There may be one each in places that the rat-like former Marine never knew he had. This for shooting Nejiko and for tearing up Bellmare's tangerine groves. And the next thing Nezumi knew was him kissing the concrete with a large bump on his cheek while another at the back of his head. "Thanks, Nami." Nejiko giggled. "I feel much better." "Give him 1,000 more for good measure," Genzo shouted since he couldn't help it, yet he didn't care if Nami heard him or not. She just kneeled to the twitching Nezumi. "Good that you are still alive, because I want to let you know that your men will clean up Arlong Park and return any treasure to the people of Gosa and anyone else whose money was exported from them by force." Nezumi weakly obeyed to try and get Nami to stop tugging on his surprisingly realistic whiskers. "And another thing, I want my money back." "I will do what you want, please don't kill me," Nezumi shouted despite some broken rib poking at his lungs. And Nami just released him by pulling on the whiskers extra hard and let them snap back. "You heard him, boys, give the Marines his word and have fun doing it." Luffy stepped in and the imposter Marines saluted to mock Nezumi and the Marines in general before marching off in the same manner. "That was really hardcore back there, Nami. I always knew you had it in you." Anyone could pass that off, but to all those who need Luffy also knew that last sentence had strong meaning behind each word. "Luffy," Nami looked up to her savior, her hero, her idol and her man. She then tackled him and gave the strongest kiss she could muster, which was enough for the raven-haired pirate captain. "Thanks for everything. I wasn't lying when you are my navigator, Nami. Never think that I will trade for anyone else. I think that without you, I will always be lost." Luffy responded and Nami nodded. He could feel her head moving like that on his chest. Later, after the hunters and civilians continued to impersonate the Marines that once served under Nezumi, they got the real Marines to believe Nami's demands as Nezumi's orders and did as such. They just didn't count on the townspeople to kick them off the island shore and into a boat along with the barely alive Nezumi, to be at the bottom of a pile of confused and underdressed Marines. Meanwhile, the inhabitants of the Konami Islands finally started to use the money celebrate. But since Luffy and his group are pirates, they will have to leave before a new set of Marines and captain to come and patrol the island in the place of Nezumi. So while they were allowed to party, there were some things to be done before they could leave. Zoro moved in anything heavy into the king's gourd. Sanji restocked the kitchen for real. Usopp reloaded himself on ammo and even bring along some rifles to experiment with. Kaya brought along some spare medical books from Dr. Nato himself. And Alvida asked of Jin, politely of course, to help place the Going Merry within the king's gourd like Luffy had designed his main ship to do. Meanwhile, the captain and his girl had some more to do. They followed Genzo to a grave made out of a wooden cross. When they arrived, he was spilling some wine over as ritual that believes that an order drink with a spirit in heaven will be to give it to the grave and the wine will follow the same path of the deceased supposedly. "You," Genzo said a lot softer than back when the Marines ransacked the tangerine groves. He had gotten somewhat over his hatred of pirates to make room for some respect towards Luffy. He then said nothing else when Luffy revealed to have bought a bouquet of flowers with Nami's guidance to place on the grave while Nami did a fresh tangerine and a seed in the soil. Luffy stayed with Nami as they paid their respects to the one whose grave they're at. Nami and Nejiko's adoptive mother, Bellmere. Luffy may truthfully not know a thing about her, but Nami filled him in on what he needed to know to silently thanking Bellmere for doing the right thing for her daughters and being a person that Nami can truly love. Nami herself thanked Bellmere for loving her and teaching her how to follow her heart and pursue her dream. That was how she met Luffy and everything else that she thought she will never find for herself. "You boy," Genzo said as Luffy and Nami started to part for the village. "I can no longer stop Nami now, so you will need to look after her. To always make her happy, never sad. If someone does make her sad, kill him. If you do, then I will kill you myself. Understand?" "Yes, I do." "Not good enough. I want to hear you swear, and on your life and blood." "I swear. With all my heart and soul and body." Luffy answered and Genzo smiled a smile that no one saw but he didn't care. "Then go and protect Nami, do what I can no longer do." Luffy nodded and slightly tightened his embrace on his girl who was feeling lighthearted from all this. Of course, Bellmere was her mother, but Nami never got to tell Genzo that he was the father as well. And then the next day came and it was time to shove off. Johnny and Yosaku said that they just weren't for bounty hunting anymore and stayed with the village in order to truly regain their honor by distrusting Nami all along. But Nami still hadn't arrived yet. Can we leave, Captain? There's no time to waste once the new Marines come. Jin demanded to know, but Luffy ignored him with a large smirk on his face. Be patient, she is coming, Luffy said in a not caring tone with a dreamy look on his face. Kinda like those cartoon characters in Love. And remember, when she reaches the pier, start to take off, okay? Luffy said with a much more serious tone, and after a few more minutes, Nami did appear, and right at the pier where everyone on the island were piled in. Go. While everyone hurried to kick off, Luffy had a show seeing Nami moving a zigzagging motion throughout the crowds. Then she ran off the pier and right on the ship, just in time to steal a kiss on the captain. Did you do it? Did you remember to say goodbye in Nami fashion? Nami just kissed Luffy again before dropping from the railing of the King's Gourd and onto the deck. Then she clutched the edges of her shirt and unloaded purses and wallets. When everyone was panicking as to where their money went, Nami smirked at them all with a berry bill in between her fingers at them. See you all later, suckers. She tricked us. And when we wanted to say goodbye too, they all shouted at once while Luffy laughed at the whole scene with his crew shaking their heads in disbelief that only their captain can even find this amusing. We will miss you, you brats. And that was the last of the Konami Islands any of the pirates had ever seen in a while. Flashback ends. Yeah. Nami said in a distant tone. I am lucky to remember that love is and feel it again. And it is all thanks to my captain, my man, my Luffy. Alvida smiled to see that Nami was now filled with nothing but pure happiness, instead of fear-kept secrets and painful memories. But it is too bad that you got him first, Alvida suddenly said. I mean that I wanted to be his girlfriend after how he had given me what I really wanted more than anything in the world and even gave me a lifelong dream. I love him too, she said while Nami looked more conflicted than angry. What is wrong? Did I make you feel crushed? No, I did. There was this to Luffy that I still haven't decided, Nami said in an encrypted tone. If I decide yes, then you will be able to date Luffy as well as me. But the captain couldn't give his word without harming my own feelings, so it is all in my word. Alvida really didn't know what is going on, but she knew better not to. And that was when Nijiko had come out of the salon with her hair dyed into a sky blue and her tattoos were now more like a tangerine grove with windmills on a few of the vine ends. Looking pretty nice, Nijiko. Thanks, sister. And you should relax because that is what Luffy-kun wanted us to do, right? Nijiko responded and somehow found Nami nodding quite cute. And after heading off to maybe find the others since they had been around for over a good 3 hours. It was amazing that they weren't found out to be pirates and arrested yet. They managed to find Kaya, leaving with some medicine books and some more doctor supplies with Usopp, who already gotten all the secret ingredients for some more surprise ammunition to his slingshot and rifle. He also had gotten some kind of headgear with scopes that can be easily adjusted for long-range shooting, and it rested perfectly on Usopp's head cap. Then they managed to find Sanji, who had Jin help him with the food he discovered in the market and with some kind of giant fish. And finally, they ran into Zoro, who had 2 new swords in hand already, and it seemed that he was also in some good mood, nothing they expected from simply buying 2 new swords. But regardless, they felt like they needed to split up to make it back to their ship to restock and get ready to ship out, but they couldn't leave without Luffy. While Nami, Nijiko, Kaya and Usopp stayed to protect the ship, the others left for Luffy. XXXXX. Yet elsewhere in Logatown. What the hell? Smoker shouted at the top of his voice, seeming for the umpteenth time to his subordinates as the captain paced back in force. There was already a grove in the pavement. I can't believe it, I had that man. I even ran into his crew but let them go. And first I'm a marine captain that never lets pirate roam free in my turf. Smoker was not too happy that he had searched the market and ran into Sanji, but that was before Jin managed to regroup with the cook, so Smoker didn't do them in. He didn't do that even when he saw Tashigi discussing swords. He didn't while Usopp and Kaya were in a bookstore. He didn't even when he ran into the girls on their shopping trips. And now, Smoker was told that he had to let them all feel welcome in Logatown despite being pirates. Sir. That could have been another marine addressing Smoker, but it wasn't. It was a young man wearing only a pair of pants and a towel over his shoulders. Something of an apprentice. The same could be said for his companion that was dressed the same way. The only difference was that the first apprentice had pink hair and the other had blonde hair. What is headquarters going to say about this? They won't like it, master. Of course not. A large man, hidden in the shadows with only his uniform showing. That is why I am here. I knew that he and his little ragtag band of pirates will stop here as their final stop before the Grand Line, to follow his foolish dream. I assure you, Vice Admiral. Smoker said with a much more respectful tone towards the shadowed man. I will not let him get away. And when you do, I will take over Brat. That same man retorted. That idiotic Brat has already caused enough trouble for the government back in his home island, and he is not the typical pirate. You're not his level, Smoker Brat. Smoker grumpily agreed, since it was hard to deny the word of a Vice Admiral. He just went to where Straw Hat was last reported. And that was where a crowd was watching something horrifying, so Smoker simply asked of his marines to try and keep the people down while noticing that there was a mob at the base of the execution arts all tied up. Smoker was only tempted to capture the pirates since a few of Straw Hat's fighters were there, busy with the numbers of the buggy pirates. XXXXX back at the execution stand, Luffy was not comfortable. Not the least when you were in his position. How did I get into this mess? Luffy asked as he was shackled with something that was draining away his power by touch. Just where did he get this shackles made out of kairoseki? It is supposed to be well out of reach for pirates like himself. And anything else Luffy could was as to watch Sanji, Zoro, Alvida and Jin fend off the pirates with clown makeup, just like with Orangetown. Zoro got the acrobatic swordsman while the others have the numbers since there was only one officer under Buggy, who at the time was standing right on Luffy's bound body. Isn't this a flashy day and one that is all for me because I have got you Straw Hat right where I want you? To personally kill and behead you right where the great pirate king once was as well. Buggy thought that he was damping Luffy's spirits with the irony of the circumstances. And the captain was glad to see that his crew were successfully keeping the marines away with a mob and also keeping the Straw Hat pirates from reaching Luffy. And now it is time. Buggy then took out a cutlass from nowhere, sharpened and ready for slicing. And, as Buggy took Poseidon, everyone on the island felt dread all of a sudden. The air had gotten slightly warm and felt wet. There was this wind coming from all directions gently, above the platform that everyone ignored. But on the King's Gourd, the guarding Straw Hats had looked towards Logatown while, in ropes, were the animal trainer from Bugger's crew and his prized lion. They also had a large bump on their head to complement their various bruises. Luffy, Nami softly said. Why'd I feel this? I thought you were going to be fine on your own and we are going to set sail together. Instead this happens. Why? Nami asked whoever is listening but didn't actually want an answer. Just kept looking in the direction of the execution platform and could have sworn to see all the way to the side, just in time to see Luffy smiling and a cutlass inches from his neck. Sorry everyone. But, I'm dead. Luffy said that with a smile on his face that just mocked everything with Buggy's cutlass finally nearing his neck. No, damn it. Don't say that, Luffy-kun. He laughed, and this were settled in the Strawwoods' minds, followed by Smoker's own thoughts. But then came that stray thunderbolt followed by a rainstorm that had stopped Buggy from beheading Luffy. It even destroyed the entire platform while attacking the clown pirates at the base below. Yet somehow avoiding any civilians and the Straw Hats as well. Ha ha ha. Luffy laughed as he picked himself from the ground of the destroyed platform with only dusting and slight bursts. Sorry about that guys. Seriously, I thought I was going to die. Luffy said, strangely for a man who was saved by a stray bolt of lightning and only survived because being rubber had allowed the sheer electricity to flow off the body instead of harming it. Just what kind of captain do we have? Jin asked the rest of the baffled Straw Hats who just shrugged in response, but meanwhile. Just what kind of captain do they have? Smoker shouted in disbelief from his room, after witnessing it all. Captain. The rain had ruined all of our gunpowder and the wind is heading towards the west, the same direction as the Straw Hat pirates, another of Smoker's marines reported to him. Damn it. Was this coincidence or any other force that controls one's fate? It is like the storm is going to prevent us from capturing Straw Hat and allow him and his crew to escape, Smoker shouted. Sir, if we hurry, we can still catch them, sure, Smoker said, and that same marine noticed that the captain was trailing off. But that man was a lot like the Pirate King. And this proves it. What do you mean, Captain? When the best of us were just kids, we all were there when Gold Roger died with a smile that never left his face. Like he already accepted death all the way to his final word. Smoker continued. And that man, Straw Hat, laughed and smiled as well. How? Does all pirates smile before their deaths? No, Captain. The Marine answered. Pirates are cowards and scream instead when they are about to die. But not him. That pirate, he did what no one else did. Smile before near death, Smoker repeated. That means everything, soldier. The government will now want him dead and I am going to be what Garp was. Whatever they liked it or not, Smoker shouted and finally faced that same Marine. Prepare the Billor bike, I am going to see that Straw Hat will never leave here. Yes sir. The Marine ran like his life depended on the captain's bike being ready ASAP. And while this was happening, a familiar big man with a Marine coat was also frowning at this turn of events. Damn it Brad. You have done it. You have proven yourself a threat to the world as a holder of the D, he shouted, which surprisingly, no one paid any attention to. You can't escape, family brat. I will get you to be a Marine if I will have to die doing it. The man then charged into the rain to the west, following the wind. XXXXX. Glad you guys came or I will have to bulldoze myself through that army all by myself. What a waste of good time. Luffy remarked, and his crew weren't really appreciating it. They had to pass Tashigi, who was clumsily debating to aid or stop her big brother, so it was easy to move around her, while only wasting a second of their time. I thought you would have known that the Red Nose was about to ambush you, Captain. With your hockey, of course. Alvida shouted, but Luffy just nodded. Yeah, I need to sharpen up my Kenbunshoku haki and my instincts. That clown face had managed to hide his haki signature so it didn't appear on my radar. Luffy said. Guess that even the blackest of sheep can hold diamonds. Too bad he is still a coward. Just what do you know about Big Nose, Captain? Jin asked, as it is what the whole crew wanted to know as well, but they never got their answer that evening when. Not so fast, you brats. The Straw Hat stopped right in front of some man that just suddenly appeared. And it seems that this was no stranger to Luffy, who started to shake a little in fear. What the hell were you think of calling your old man as a pirate, using a marine reserved line? Like you stopped me from being friend with Shanks and eating that accursed fruit. You weren't even there to love me but pound me to the ground for not being as strong as you when you were the same age as I. Luffy shouted back. Besides, you didn't break Kobe and that idiotic Captain's son, right, Grandpa Garp? Grandpa. The Straw Hats shouted. Garp is a tall, tanned, broad-chested, muscular old man who is bearded and has a scar over his left eye. His eye colors are blue and his hair gray. He was one of the few to have special shoulder pads. His was black and red, whereas the standard color is blue. I just wish that our family reunion was of better circumstances, Luffy said with sweat down his neck along with the rain, and his hands were nervously holding his blades. But we are in a hurry. I didn't come to see you off to be a lowly pirate like that idiot Shanks, Garp retorted, but didn't say anything else. That was what got the Straw Hats confused, all except for Luffy, that is. But someone else is doing it right, Gramps, Luffy said, and I bet it will nice for you to see your son again. Luffy said, and the Straw Hats all saw that there was someone behind them. A large man with a green cloak covering most of his body. The occasional lighting strikes only showed that this man had some kind of tattoo over the right side of his face. How dare you show yourself here in the East, Blue Brat? Garp suddenly ignored the Straw Hats and focused on this man behind the pirates. Don't be like that, father. I missed you. The feeling isn't mutual, brat. Not since WHAE and to my grandson Dragon, Garp retorted, but then noticed the sound of steam. In fact, everyone saw that Luffy was suddenly pink in skin color and steam was emitting from some sections of his body. Sorry, Gramps, but I don't want to ruin your chance with your son, so I will move out of your way. Grab on and don't let go, everyone, Luffy shouted, and when his crew grasped on tightly, they all disappeared in a flash of light. But there was this that seemed to be left behind by Luffy. Thanks for the few seconds and goodbye, father. That was to be faint, like in the wind, but both Dragon and Garp heard it clearly. Dragon raced and grabbed his own father by the collar. You told him about me. Dragon was outraged, enough to strike at Garp, who was in shock as well. It was like Luffy wasn't supposed to know this. For whatever reason, Dragon has to justify not being there for his son until that same evening. And no, Garp tried to make out all this, but at least, the Straw Hats managed to get to their ship. Meanwhile, Smoker was in shock himself. Is that why the boy smiled? Because he knew that his father will not let him die? Smoker tried to make something out of this. In that case, I better not let them know, or it will be denied of what my destiny is with that man. If Straw Hat thinks that he will continue to outrun me, then I will show him. I will show them all. And just like that, history is about to repeat, and nobody saw it like that yet.